I was the dutiful husband for 2 decades, blind to the secrets buzzing right under my nose. Then one night, everything splintered. The wife I cherished invited her friend to stay, turning our home into a battleground of whispers and lies. My kids? Turns out they were never really mine. That revelation detonated my reality, leaving me numb, furious, desperate. People told me to keep quiet, play it safe, preserve some dignity, but I refused. Instead, I shredded every illusion and rose from the wreckage they created. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's the birth of a man no storm can break. I never used to pay attention to the little things like how Rosalie angled her phone away from my line of sight whenever she got a text, or how she used to set the brightness as high as possible during the daytime, but kept it at a faint glow at night. Maybe I was complacent. After 2 decades of marriage, you figure you know your spouse's habits well enough to tune them out. You figure you've achieved some level of trust so automatic it's practically muscle memory. But it's amazing what you notice when that trust starts to fray around the edges. It was a Tuesday night, around 10:30, and we were lying in bed. I was thumbing absently through a restaurant supply catalog, ironically half dreaming about new ways to refine the decor in the bistro I co-invest in. Meanwhile, Rosalie's phone kept buzzing. The screen was so dim that from my angle I couldn't see the conversation. She typed quickly, smiling to herself, then pressing the phone tight against her chest whenever I rolled over as though I might catch a glimpse. I could have shrugged it off. Maybe it was just one of her co-workers or a friend from her early morning yoga class. But something in my gut stirred. 20 years of marriage, and rarely had she ever hidden her phone like that. It was a small, subtle shift, but once you know your spouse, you can't unsee it. I didn't ask her any questions that night. I didn't explode or bark demands. I just turned onto my side, facing away from her, and pretended to sleep. Meanwhile, a cold voice deep inside whispered, "Something's not right, Brian." I was calm on the outside, but that voice stayed with me until dawn. A couple of days later, Rosalie and I were supposed to take a weekend family trip, just a little excursion to the countryside to visit local vineyards and do some father-mother-kid bonding. We'd planned it 3 months in advance. But on Thursday night, out of nowhere, she announces she can't go. She claims her marketing department is rolling out a work crisis, something about finalizing a new departmental project. She was vague on the details, and I'm not typically the suspicious type. But the air changed in our kitchen the second she made that excuse, like she was daring me to challenge her. She barely looked me in the eye, barely gave a coherent reason. "It's just urgent," she said, swiping the screen of her phone with a tight-lipped expression. "I'm sorry, honey, but my boss insisted." And that was it. No apology for the canceled plans, no sadness about missing the trip. Our 2 kids, Savannah and Kenneth, in their early college days, had each muttered some version of, "It's okay, Mom," and turned back to their phones. I kept my disappointment hidden as best I could. If she truly had an emergency at work, I could be supportive. But something about the way she stood there, shoulders stiff, phone clutched, felt staged, almost like she'd been planning to sabotage the trip all along. She left the kitchen. I stayed behind, opening a cabinet to find some tea. I remember staring at the row of boxes, mind racing about tea flavors, because my mind tends to fixate on small, practical details when something big is off-kilter. Eventually, I closed the cabinet and told myself, "You must keep your cool, Brian. Because if she's lying, if she's covering something up, flying off the handle won't give me the truth." I needed a better approach. I've been a part investor in an upscale chain of restaurants for years, some bistros, a couple of small bars, and a new gastropub venture. My official title is Culinary Operations Advisor, but in reality, I'm more of a financial backer with a passing interest in the day-to-day. Lately, though, I'd been toying with an idea that stuck in my head. Opening a specialty tea line or launching a small, dedicated tea lounge. Something that highlights the complexity of flavors, the craftsmanship, the culture behind certain Japanese or Taiwanese teas. The idea simmered in me for quite a while, not fully formed, but enough to spark my imagination. Rosalie knew about this interest. Usually, she'd either tease me, "You've got enough on your plate, Mr. Investor," or she'd encourage me in that half-distracted way spouses do after so many years. But recently, when I brought it up maybe a week before the canceled weekend trip, she went oddly pale, almost defensive. She turned the conversation around to finances like, shouldn't we be saving more for the kids' college? Or, we've got stable investments. Why risk it on tea? Her tone that day was off, and since then, she'd seemed antsy every time I mentioned money. At first, I assumed she was just worried about me sinking capital into an untested idea. But the vibe she gave me was more than worry. It felt like she was trying to hide how uncomfortable the topic made her. And so I started paying closer attention to her reactions, the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes darted around whenever I used the word account or investment. It was small stuff, but once you pick up the signals, they start blaring like sirens in your mind. Our 20th wedding anniversary was around the corner. Actually, it was exactly 15 days away. Not that I was counting every minute, but still. In the past, Rosalie loved making a show of anniversaries, booking a fancy restaurant, buying me a thoughtful gift, or orchestrating a weekend getaway. Yet this time, she completely forgot. Or at least, she acted as though the date didn't exist. I got home from a busy day of fielding calls about a new restaurant location, and I casually said, "So next month's a big milestone for us." She blinked at me, frowned, and asked, "What milestone? Something at your restaurant?" I must have looked comical, standing there in the living room with my jacket half off, mouth slightly open. I said, "Our anniversary, Rosalie, 20 years. She opened her mouth, shut it, then gave me this offhand shrug. "Oh my gosh, is it that time again?" she said with a quick laugh. Then she mumbled some excuse about having a chaotic schedule. But it stung, and I saw no genuine remorse. She just scurried away from that conversation, leaving me alone with my frustrations. It's amazing how a moment like that can break your sense of normalcy. We'd had fights before finances, the kids' education, silly household matters. But forgetting our 20th year was not a typical oops. It was like a neon sign flickering in the distance, warning me that something bigger was unraveling behind the scenes. Our kids, Savannah and Kenneth, are both in college but living at home for now to save on dorm costs. They're good kids, or so I believed, never gave me much headache, aside from typical teenage drama. However, around this time they started making odd remarks. One afternoon, Kenneth offhandedly mentioned, "Mom's new friend came by. They went out for lunch." I asked him, "Which friend?" And he just shrugged. "Harold, I think. Some coworker." Then Savannah chimed in, "Mom's been stressed about the big project. Harold's like her manager or something. She told us to cut her some slack." Those comments set me on edge, though I tried not to show it. So Rosalie was working with a guy named Harold. Big deal, right? But the tone in my kids' voices suggested they already considered him a normal presence. That alone was strange. Over 2 decades, Rosalie had female co-workers she was close with, but rarely did she mention male colleagues, definitely not in a context where she'd bring them home or share so many lunches. Something about it made me uneasy, and noticing the kids were so nonchalant was a bigger red flag. Then, one late evening, I caught Rosalie on the phone. She was whispering. I overheard bits like, "I'll see if I can get away, no, don't worry about him," followed by a laugh that had no warmth behind it, just a forced hush. When I stepped into the room, she quickly said into the phone, "Yes, Bernard, I'll call you tomorrow," then hung up. I recognized the name Bernard, her step-uncle. But come on, the tone did not sound like a typical family discussion. That night, I stared at the ceiling, my mind brimming with doubts. If she was lying, was it because Harold was on the other line, or Bernard was orchestrating something? My chest felt tight, but I forced my breathing to remain slow, determined to keep calm until I was sure of my next move. I started checking our credit card statements more closely. Not in some paranoid meltdown way, but just enough to notice anomalies. Sure enough, there were suspicious charges, expensive dinners at places I never visited, and not the typical restaurants she might go to with girlfriends. These were two-top reservations, at hours that didn't match her claim of working late. Then there were random gift store purchases, stuff I couldn't trace to anything at home. One afternoon, I decided on a whim to visit Rosalie at her office. I wanted to take her out to lunch, do something spontaneous to reassure myself that we still had a marriage worth fighting for. But when I arrived, her car was in the lot, and her coworker said, "Rosalie stepped out. She'll be gone a while. She mentioned a lunch meeting." No mention of Harold. I left a short note on a sticky pad at her desk. Missed you. Wanted to have lunch. Brian. Then I strolled back out, feeling unsettled. That entire evening, she never even brought up the note. She came home with an unusual brightness, claiming the day was crazy busy, and she was exhausted. The second she said that, my gut told me she hadn't been at that office for most of the day. And from the kids' casual comments about Mom's new friend, I could guess who she might have been with. That same night, she made a passing joke about how maybe we need some space or fresh experiences. Her exact words. She laughed after saying it like it was just a playful comment, but my stomach dropped. It was that brand of half-serious suggestion that people float when they're testing the waters. Should we open up the marriage? Should we see other people? She never said it outright, but the vibe was there. I forced a laugh too, replying, "New experiences? We can always travel or learn a new hobby, but I'm not sure about." And I left it hanging. She smiled, shrugged, and brushed it aside, saying, "I'm just joking. Don't take it so personally." But my mind refused to calm down. That night, after she fell asleep, I lay awake, a deep sense of dread clawing at my chest. Because once your partner starts talking about, maybe we need to see other possibilities, it signals a door has been opened in their mind, a door that might lead to betrayal. A few days later, I received an anonymous text from an unknown number. It read, "Your wife is playing you open your eyes." Just that. No further explanation, no signature. A part of me wanted to dismiss it as a prank or spam, but combined with everything else, it was like I'd taken a cannonball to the gut. My heart hammered as I scrolled the message over and over, searching for a clue. Who could have sent it? A coworker at her firm who felt guilty watching her cheat? One of my acquaintances trying to tip me off? My mind swirled with possibilities. I didn't show Rosalie the text. Instead, I quietly archived it, determined to see if I could glean more from context. That same day, I tried opening Rosalie's laptop to pay a household bill. She'd always had it set to autologin. But now, I was greeted with a password prompt. I tried our usual passwords, anniversary dates, the kids' names, but each one was wrong. I walked away from her laptop with a burning sense of confirmation. She'd locked me out, which meant she was definitely hiding something. Later in the living room, I casually asked her if she changed her laptop password. She froze for half a second, then said something about IT at her job telling everyone to secure their devices. The fluster in her eyes told me all I needed to know. My wife was shielding her personal files and messages from me. Everything pointed to Harold as a main suspect. She mentioned him repeatedly as a colleague, and the kids kept referencing him too. And then there was Bernard, her step-uncle, who apparently had fingers in many corporate pies and was known for his intimidation tactics. I overheard a phone call of Bernard praising Harold for some achievement, but they spoke in half-coded statements that left me uneasy. One evening, I was in the hallway near Rosalie's office room at home, and I caught a snippet of conversation. Bernard's voice, on speakerphone, deep and condescending, "Don't slip up, keep him calm. You know we need to maintain appearances." Rosalie exhaling sharply, "I know. I've got it under control. Harold is making sure everything runs smooth." Then she must have heard a floorboard creak under my foot because she ended the call abruptly. That was enough to confirm that not only was Harold a fixture in her life, but Bernard was somehow orchestrating things. My suspicions soared to a new level. This wasn't just a standard affair. There might be a financial or manipulative angle. Even the kids seemed to side with her. One bizarre conversation had Savannah telling me, "Dad, don't smother Mom. She deserves her own freedom. She's done so much for us, right?" My own daughter acting like Rosalie was some saint who needed my permission to roam. The clarity was brutal. They didn't see how her behavior was disrespecting me. Or maybe they saw it but didn't care. I decided to investigate quietly rather than confront. If I confronted her without proof, she'd deny, spin a new story, maybe hide it deeper. If Harold was indeed more than a colleague, I needed solid evidence. I hired a private detective, a discreet professional who specialized in marital infidelity cases and corporate background checks. The detective was thorough, promising they'd keep me updated. A few nights later, I got an email from them. The subject line, Harold and Rosalie. My throat constricted. The body of the message read, "Harold has been seeing Rosalie for months. Bernard funds some of her recent expenses. You may want to look into paternity questions, as certain rumors point to a deeper connection with Bernard. I can assist if you choose DNA testing. I felt my face go numb. So Bernard was paying for Rosalie's lifestyle, and Harold was her what? Lover? Partner in crime? Possibly both. And the detective's mention of paternity sent a chill down my spine. Are my kids even mine? That single question threatened to crumble everything I believed in. Then I learned Harold had been bragging about moving in soon. Meanwhile, Rosalie had changed the locks at the house. My phone buzzed. A text from Rosalie arrived. We need to talk about our marriage terms. My mind reeled. Why would she jump straight to terms? She wasn't even trying to salvage anything, was she? She was planning the end. Rage welled in me, but I forced it down, replaced it with a cold, methodical determination. I wouldn't let her, Harold or Bernard, trample me into nothing. I called a friend of mine who's an attorney and told him, freeze every joint account we have. The final betrayal came when my kids texted me a group message. Mom says you should stay out tonight. She's stressed. Don't come home. That was it. My children effectively telling me to find somewhere else to sleep, on their mother's orders. I sank into an armchair, breathing slowly, the anger pounding in my temples. This was no longer a minor marital spat. It was all-out betrayal, a conspiracy that might involve finances, real estate, and maybe even the paternity of the kids I raised. A perfect storm swirling around me. But I wasn't going to drown. I was going to take control. My entire mindset shifted after that barrage of betrayals. The first day I realized she'd changed the locks, I took a deep breath and told myself, no more illusions. Don't cling to normal. She's made her move. I spent that morning in my car, parked near a coffee shop, calling various banks. Over the next several hours, I set in motion a quiet exodus of funds. My attorney friend guided me. Take half the savings, or all of it if you can, and funnel it into an offshore account or something similarly unreachable. You have that right, especially if you suspect financial foul play on her end. So I did exactly that. Meanwhile, I texted Rosalie with a friendly note. Let's meet tonight for dinner. I'm open to discussing anything calmly. A wave of disgust threatened to spill out of my chest as I hit send, but I forced myself to appear cooperative. If I appeared combative, she might bury evidence or accelerate her plan. Inside, my anger was raw and red-hot, but I'd studied enough cheating stories to know that an emotional blow-up can overshadow the real objective, winning the war. So I put on a polite front, as though I was some clueless husband ready to sign over half my fortune just to keep her. Let her believe that. Let Harold believe that. The calmer I appeared, the more reckless they'd become. I arranged a meeting with an attorney named Dina White, recommended by a restaurant associate. She was from Canada originally, a corporate lawyer with broad knowledge of business expansions and personal wealth protection. I felt a twinge of irony that we spent the first few minutes chatting about exotic teas. She mentioned she'd once worked on an intellectual property case for a small tea company in Vancouver. It was oddly comforting, given that my dream of a specialty tea venture had been overshadowed by personal chaos. When I explained my situation, infidelity, financial infiltration by a step-uncle, possible paternity fraud, she listened intently, then offered direct, no-nonsense advice. Document everything. Keep your cool. If you lose your temper and do something rash, you give them grounds to manipulate the narrative. Hide your assets so that if they come for them, you have the final say. Her calm voice bolstered my morale. I realized I had a real ally who wasn't just about extracting legal fees. She seemed genuinely intrigued by the intricacies of my predicament. By the end of that meeting, I had a plan to secure property deeds, shift finances, and possibly open a new business entity in my name alone. I left her office thinking, it's remarkable how you can be quietly raging yet outwardly polite. Even Dina, a complete stranger, didn't see the volcanic anger in my chest. That was the moment I realized, I can do this. I can outsmart them all. That same night, Rosalie posted a series of photos on social media. She and Harold, out at some lavish restaurant, toasting each other with wine glasses. The captions were so brazen, like she was flaunting it. She said something about celebrating the success of our team, with little heart emojis. My friends who saw it messaged me privately, "Dude, what's going on?" That's not normal. I responded only with, She's under stress at work, I guess. I was playing the role of the ignorant or overly trusting spouse. Meanwhile, Rosalie kept ignoring me at home or ignoring my calls, physically spending more time with Harold. The kids? They ate it up. It's a modern era, Dad. People can have friends of the opposite sex, Kenneth told me once with a bored shrug. But I wasn't fooled. After the detective's tip, I knew Harold was more than a friend. He was actively planning to move into my house. In the hours I wasn't meeting attorneys, I was updating my private detective. I told them, focus on finances. If Harold is using my wife for a big settlement, I want to see any text, email, or call log that indicates it. And like clockwork, I discovered Harold had quietly left his old apartment lease. He was apparently staying in an extended stay hotel until the right moment. The right moment for what? Probably to swoop into my bed, my property, and my entire life. Yet outwardly, I let Rosalie do as she pleased. She thought I was too naive or too weak to protest. Bernard came into the picture more forcefully. Rosalie invited him over one evening. I pretended to be out, but from across the street I watched Bernard's black SUV roll into my driveway. He walked in with that arrogant posture, the guy who reminds me he's in charge. I waited a bit, then let myself inside quietly. I overheard them in the living room, voices muffled. Bernard's tone was deep and authoritative. Push for full settlement, Rosalie. You deserve half of everything. Don't let him bargain you down. She responded, I know, but he's not been as combative as we thought. Maybe we can get more. My stomach churned. They were dividing my assets like it was a game. Then Bernard said, and don't forget the kids. Courts favor the mother. Plus, the paternal question might force him to pay anyway, unless he fights it. I gripped the wall, swallowing my fury. So they planned to force me into child support for kids who might not even be mine. My hands shook with adrenaline, but I kept silent. Then Harold entered the conversation, speaking from somewhere behind them. He'll fold once we present the emotional angle. We might even claim he was an absentee father. I'd heard enough. I slinked back out, hopped in my car, and drove off. My heart hammered so loudly I thought I might pass out, but I kept telling myself, calm, 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 because now it wasn't mere suspicion. I had heard them explicitly conspiring. My revenge would have to be swift, sure, and unstoppable. I recall a tense lunch with a longtime friend named Miguel, who was also a minority investor in one of my restaurants. He'd heard rumors about Rosalie and Harold. Over spicy fish tacos, he blurted, Dude, you have to do something. You look like you're letting her humiliate you. People are talking. I nodded, swirling my iced tea. I have a plan, I said simply. He eyed me, skeptical. Sure you do, but from the outside it looks like she's walking all over you. Harold's parading around in your territory. I just gave him a half smile. Trust me, I'm not done. I'm just not giving them a heads up. Miguel sighed. All right. I hope you know what you're doing. We parted ways and I felt renewed. Let them think I'm spineless or clueless. The more they underestimate me, the bigger the impact when I strike. During this time, I quietly installed new lines of security. I had a separate P.O. box for important documents. I rented a small storage unit where I moved some personal valuables, old photo albums, family heirlooms. Meanwhile, I left behind random items, so Rosalie wouldn't suspect a mass exodus of my belongings. One day, I had a locksmith friend rekey my own safe deposit box. Rosalie had her name on the old one, so I opened a brand new one at a different bank. No trace of her. I placed property deeds for a piece of land I'd bought years ago, stock certificates, and other critical papers there. Next, I braced myself for the final puzzle piece, the DNA test results. I'd quietly gathered hair samples from a brush Kenneth used and from Savannah's laundry hamper. The detective had passed them to a reputable lab. Waiting for those results was like waiting for a storm to hit. I prayed the kids were mine, but the detective's repeated suggestions made me doubt. If they weren't mine, everything about my last 2 decades was a lie. One night, out on the porch, my phone rang. It was the lab, calling to confirm they had completed preliminary analysis. I paced the porch, heart pounding. They'll be done in a couple days, the lab rep said. I stared at the night sky, exhaling a shaky breath. It's bizarre to stand in your own home, the place you built for your family, and realize your entire fatherhood might be a fraud. But I forced that emotional tornado into a locked box inside my head. I needed composure if I was going to beat Rosalie at her own game. Rosalie made her boldest move yet. She invited Harold to move in. When I came home one afternoon, I found Harold's suitcases in the living room. Rosalie confronted me with a smug look. "Harold's staying here now. We need to figure out living arrangements." I forced a mild expression, as though I was only mildly shocked. "Living arrangements? This is our marital home, Rosalie." She shrugged. "It was, but we're heading for divorce. Face it. The kids are fine with Harold. They want him around. It's easier if we do this now." She practically challenged me to fight her. My pulse roared in my ears, but I conjured a measured response. "If that's what you want," I said quietly. I guess I never expected you to be so open about it." She laughed dryly. "We're all adults, Brian. No point hiding anymore." That same evening, I pretended I had to work late, staying at a friend's place. Before leaving, I passed by the living room and saw Harold in my robe sipping whiskey, while Kenneth asked him about some sports highlights. My own son, treating me like I was some afterthought. I clenched my fist, then walked out with my head high. Because if I let them see my heartbreak, it'd be that much sweeter for them. But I was saving my heartbreak for my quiet moments, my revenge for when they least expected it. Savannah caught up with me in the driveway. "Dad, you okay?" She sounded half concerned, half bored. I looked at her. "Shouldn't I be the one asking if you're okay with all this?" She shrugged. "Mom said we're a modern family. If you and she can't keep things exciting, maybe it's time for a change." I'm not judging. The casual cruelty of her words was staggering. "You realize this is humiliating for me, right?" I asked. "Your mother is basically parading her affair partner here." Savannah gave me an eye roll. "Dad, you're too old-fashioned. If you two are heading to divorce, why not just split amicably and let her be happy?" I couldn't even respond. The child I had raised to be compassionate and bright seemed to have no empathy for me in that moment. Instead, she snapped a piece of gum and walked back inside, leaving me to stand there with the evening air chilling around me. That was the moment I began to suspect, deep in my heart, that they might not be my kids after all, because how else could they so casually betray me? The next afternoon, I got the email from the DNA lab. 0% paternal match for both Savannah and Kenneth. My eyes blurred reading it. My mouth went dry. The pain was so intense it felt like I'd been gutted. For a few minutes, I was physically unsteady, forced to sit down on the edge of my friend's sofa. I was crashing at his place. When the wave of shock subsided, though, a strange clarity emerged. No wonder Rosalie had always coddled them, turned them against me. No wonder she once tearfully said, "Promise never to test the kids' paternity." They were never mine. Possibly Bernard's, from rumors of an unusual closeness. That meant my entire fatherhood role for the last 2 decades was built on deception. It was heartbreak. But heartbreak can turn into a cold, fierce adrenaline if you let it. And I did. I typed a text to Dina, my attorney ally. "DNA test says 0% match. I want to finalize asset transfers and ensure we disclaim any paternal obligations." She replied promptly, scheduling a next-day appointment. I stared at the wall, tears burning at the corners of my eyes, but not falling. My mind repeated, "Rosalie robbed me of fatherhood. She let me pour my soul into those kids who aren't even mine." My heartbreak morphed into anger, then hardened into determination. If they wanted a divorce, I'd give them a war instead. Days later, Rosalie demanded we meet to sign a divorce settlement. She had an official letter delivered. She wanted the house, half my finances, plus child support for 2 college kids. She called it fair. The kids were gleeful, thinking they'd get money for cars or tuition from me. Harold was bragging to neighbors, "Brian's basically done. He'll sign off everything to keep the peace." But that night, I shut my laptop with a grim finality. I texted Rosalie, "Yes, let's meet tomorrow to discuss the settlement. I'm ready to sign." She responded within seconds, a triumphant, "Finally you see sense." Little did she know, the lock on the safe deposit box was changed. My bank accounts were relocated overseas. My properties were retitled to a newly formed LLC, which she had no claim to. My next step, the confrontation. If they wanted to push me out of my own life, I'd show them I wasn't the naive fool they assumed. I closed my eyes, heart pounding. They have no idea who they're messing with, I thought. Tomorrow it begins. We chose a fancy restaurant for the so-called divorce settlement meeting. Rosalie insisted on a public place, probably to keep me from causing a scene. Harold was there, wearing a smug grin and a new designer watch I suspect he bought with my wife's hush money from Bernard. Bernard himself showed up in a dark suit, exuding that intimidating aura. I arrived calmly, Dina by my side. Rosalie's lawyer, a woman named Miss Peyton, had a thick file. "Shall we begin?" she said crisply. I nodded, settling into a seat. My attorney, Dina, silent but watchful, placed a smaller folder on the table. Harold lounged back, swirling a glass of wine. Bernard glowered at me, arms folded. I steeled myself, ignoring the furious swirl inside. Meanwhile, Rosalie pulled out the proposed settlement forms. She wanted the house, half my overall assets, plus monthly support for the kids. I skimmed the pages, face impassive. "That's quite a list," I remarked lightly. Harold snickered, muttering something about "better sign it now." I caught Dina's eye. She gave me the smallest nod. This was our moment. Rosalie delivered her final ultimatum with an air of victory. "Sign, or I'll drag your name through the mud. We have plenty of evidence you were an absentee husband, always focused on your restaurants. We'll say you neglected your kids. The court typically favors the mother, you know." Inside me, a tide of fury threatened to crash, but my exterior remained cool. I turned to her lawyer, Miss Peyton. "Before we proceed, I have a small matter to clarify." I reached into my jacket pocket, pulling out an envelope. My voice was measured, quiet enough that the people at adjacent tables might not hear, but strong enough that the tension in our group soared. "Rosalie," I said, "I have DNA results indicating Savannah and Kenneth are not my biological children." Harold set down his wine abruptly. Rosalie's face blanched. Bernard stiffened, gaze flicking from the envelope to Rosalie's expression. Dina slid a copy of the results across the table, her posture poised. "No paternal match," she said calmly. Miss Peyton's jaw dropped. She glanced at Rosalie, who seemed momentarily speechless. "That's impossible," Rosalie spat after a second, though her voice wavered. I leaned forward, eyes on Bernard. "Bernard, you want to comment on fatherhood?" He paled. "What are you implying, Brian?" I almost smiled. "I'm not implying, I'm stating. The test strongly suggests the kids share paternal DNA with someone related to Rosalie's maternal line. Seeing as you're her step-uncle, you might know something?" Rosalie's fury sparked. "You have no right." Harold tried to intervene. "Wait, this was just about dividing assets." But Dina interjected firmly. "Under the law, if these children are not Brian's, there is no spousal or child support to demand. The entire premise of this settlement collapses." Harold's eyes darted around. He was clearly reeling. But we thought, the kids always believed Brian was their father." Bernard's glare turned lethal. "Brian, watch yourself. This defamation could cost you." I locked eyes with him, letting a cold grin surface. "No, you watch yourself. We have phone records, financial statements showing hush money you paid Rosalie, plus other calls linking you and Harold to certain intimidation attempts." At that moment, Miss Peyton tried to shuffle papers in a panic. The entire table felt ready to erupt. Rosalie shattered the tension by shouting, "You can't do this! I gave you 20 years of my life, Brian!" Her voice cracked in a mix of rage and desperation. Diners at nearby tables began turning their heads, curious. Harold, reaching out to placate her, murmured, "Calm down, baby. We can spin this differently." Bernard muttered, "This is far from over. I have judges in my pocket." I lifted my phone, tapping the screen. "And I have your phone calls recorded. Bank statements with your hush money. Threatening messages. Enough to bury your claims." Harold's jaw dropped. He realized he was implicated in extortion attempts. Meanwhile, Rosalie's face reddened as she realized her perfect plan was unraveling publicly. She tried to gather dignity, but it was gone. In that hush, I tore the settlement papers in half. "Meaningless," I said, letting the pieces flutter onto the table. "You get nothing." Rosalie screeched, "You have no right." But Dina quietly cut in. "He has every right given the fraud involved. And as for the kids, the DNA test is conclusive. There's no child support if they're not his. Good luck explaining that to any judge." Harold muttered to Bernard, "This is a fiasco. He scammed us. I thought we were scamming him." I turned an icy gaze on Harold. "You scammed no one. I scammed you. The difference is I did it legally. You tried to extort me for half my assets or more." Harold's face contorted, a mixture of fear and anger. Bernard was seething, fists clenched. Rosalie was trembling, tears threatening. Miss Peyton simply closed her folder, apparently at a loss for words. Finally, Bernard hissed at me. "I'll ruin your business. Don't think you can just walk away." I leaned back. "Oh, I'm walking away tomorrow, in fact. I have a flight. I suggest you gather your people and move out of my house tonight if you haven't already." Rosalie's eyes widened. "Move out? Brian, the kids," I replied. "They're not my kids. I've left instructions for them to find other accommodations. Maybe you and Harold can handle that." Her face contorted. "But they need—" I stood, straightening my jacket. "I've given them everything I had for 20 years. Now the rest is up to you." Out in the parking lot, chaos erupted further. Harold stormed out behind Rosalie, who was crying. Bernard tried to corner me near my car. "Brian, this won't end well for you," he said. His voice was menacing, like a gangster threatening a shop owner. Dina stepped in, brandishing a piece of paper. "We can request a restraining order, Bernard. Back off," he sneered. "I own judges." I let out a short laugh. "Maybe so, but I won't be in your jurisdiction for long." Behind him, Rosalie shouted, "You can't abandon our kids!" She sounded desperate now. I gave a half-turn, replying, "They're not mine to abandon." My tone was steely but calm. That phrase must have pierced her because she let out a ragged sob. Harold tried to shuffle her into their car while Bernard glared at me. My last glimpse was Rosalie, tears streaking her face, calling my name in disbelief. I got in the car with Dina and we sped off. My heart hammered as adrenaline surged. Yet I also felt lighter, as though I'd torn off a suffocating mask. This was it. I'd just severed my old life in one savage meeting. I was free now to finalize my plan and depart. Back at the house, I realized I needed to enforce the lock change. I had arranged a security team, 2 guys I trusted from a private agency, to secure the property. They waited for me near the driveway. When Harold and Rosalie showed up about an hour later, they found the front gate locked and the door codes changed. I stood off to the side, letting the security team handle it. The kids arrived soon after, outraged that their key fob no longer worked. Kenneth banged on the locked door, shouting, "Dad's gone insane!" Savannah stammered, "We have nowhere to go!" Harold tried to remain composed, but he was furious, barking at Rosalie. "You said the house was practically yours!" Rosalie tried to blame Bernard. "He told me to push for more money!" And the kids stared at her as if they were finally noticing the ugly reality. A local officer arrived after Harold called the cops, but I calmly presented proof that the house is solely under my name, and the officer shook his head. "They have no legal right to stay here if you don't allow it." I watched them gather their suitcases and leftover belongings, retreating. Harold glowered at me with eyes full of hatred. Rosalie looked shattered. The kids were wide-eyed in shock. I said nothing, letting them feel the consequences of pushing me too far. Within hours, I made the final bank transfers. Joint accounts were zeroed out, credit cards canceled. I heard Rosalie tried to use one that night at a motel, but it got declined. Fine by me. The next day, I checked in on Kenneth's and Savannah's college tuition funds I had previously contributed heavily to. I withdrew them or redirected them to a new account in my sole control, leaving them effectively with no coverage unless I decided otherwise. Harold apparently had some personal savings, but nowhere near enough to sustain the lifestyle they'd planned. And Bernard, well, he was furious, calling them incompetent. Rosalie attempted to call me repeatedly, but I let those calls go unanswered. One last time, my kids tried to reach me, demanding money for their schooling. But after discovering the paternal truth, I had zero inclination. Not that I wanted them on the street, but I was no longer their piggy bank. If they were Bernard's kids, let Bernard step up. The realization was brutal and sad, but also empowering. That night, I booked a flight to Tokyo. Dina had connections in Asia, where I could explore my dream of launching a tea enterprise. Part of me felt heartbreak at leaving the U.S., but the rest of me felt an exhilarating sense of escape. I was cutting the final cord to a fraudulent marriage and an ungrateful brood. The next morning, I woke up, boarded my flight with Dina by my side, and never looked back. The plane ride was surreal. I stared out the window, thinking about my 20-year marriage to a woman who systematically lied to me. Rosalie allowed me to believe I was a father to 2 children that I loved, only for me to discover it was all a sham, and the step-uncle, the moral depravity of that alone was staggering. I let myself feel the sadness. No matter how methodical I was in revenge, I was still a man who'd lost the family he thought he had. My mind replayed memories of birthdays, soccer games, father-daughter dances, all now stained by the knowledge that those kids were never truly mine. It left a hollow ache. But as we soared through the clouds, I also felt a resolute sense of pride. I didn't lose my dignity. They may have humiliated me in public for a moment, but in the end, I took away their illusions of victory. They had no claim to my assets or my future. The heartbreak might heal, given time. My self-respect remained intact. Dina sat next to me, quietly reading some business proposal. I felt grateful for her no-nonsense presence. She was a professional, yes, but also unexpectedly compassionate in her own calm, business-like way. Without her guidance, maybe I would have flown off the handle and lost everything. Now, I had a new chapter waiting for me in Tokyo. As the flight neared final approach, I opened an email from an old friend. "Heard about the drama," it read. "Glad you made your move. Best of luck, brother." A warm rush of relief flooded me. In all the chaos, it was easy to forget I still had real friends who believed in me. I looked at Dina, who gave me a small nod. "Ready to finalize that tea venture?" she asked. I exhaled slowly. "Yes, let's do it. We'll build something new, something that nobody can take away." I saw Rosalie's face in my mind, her stunned betrayal when I revealed the DNA test, her furious eyes. I saw the kid's confusion and I felt a pang of guilt. But guilt for what? I had done my best as a father, not knowing the truth. Ultimately, it was Rosalie's betrayal that wrecked any chance of a normal family. Stepping off the plane in Tokyo, I clutched my carry-on, feeling a surge of cautious optimism. This was the beginning of my new life, free from the toxic weight of Rosalie's lies. For the first time in weeks, I breathed in the crisp air of possibility and let the tension drain from my shoulders. I was battered, but not broken, and I was determined to create a future on my terms, far from the manipulations of my ex-wife and her unscrupulous accomplices. The first few days in Tokyo were a blur of neon lights, formal business introductions, and a strange sense of personal liberation. I'd arrived with a battered spirit, but also, for the first time in years, I felt unshackled. The city itself seemed to mirror my mindset, bustling and bright at all hours, offering countless possibilities for reinvention. I'd booked a month-long stay in a modern high-rise apartment in the Shibuya district, courtesy of a realtor Dina knew. On the very first morning after we touched down, I found myself awake before dawn, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at a skyline that glowed with early lights and faint silhouettes of distant skyscrapers. Dina had yet to wake. She was staying in a separate unit down the hall, but we'd be meeting for breakfast soon to discuss next steps. My reflection in the glass revealed a man who looked older than his 40-some years deep lines around my eyes, hair slightly disheveled, but my jaw was set with determination. I reminded myself, "You came here to build a dream." Specifically, my vision of launching a high-end tea brand that could bridge Western markets with authentic Eastern craftsmanship. Ironically, the meltdown of my marriage had given me the time and the raw emotional fuel I needed to throw myself into the project. I told myself that as soon as I stabilized this new life, I could fully shut the door on Rosalie, Harold, Bernard, and even the kids who weren't really mine. Maybe I'd keep a tiny sliver of compassion for them, but that was it. Everything else was ashes. Early that morning, I brewed a simple pot of sencha from a sampler kit I'd picked up at the airport. The aroma, a grassy, earthy scent, filled the apartment. I sipped it, thinking about how tea had once been a comforting ritual for me. Let it be again, I thought. In those quiet moments, I felt a flicker of excitement, like an ember catching the wind. My first official meeting with potential Japanese partners took place in a sleek, minimalist office space in Ginza. Dina accompanied me not just as my attorney, but as a sort of silent business partner. We'd discussed the structure. I'd invest a significant portion of my reallocated funds to form what we were tentatively calling Sakura Leaf, while Dina offered legal expertise and some capital. The concept was a high-end brand focusing on curated tea experiences, selling premium loose-leaf varieties, offering guided tastings, and eventually opening storefront lounges in major global cities. The local partners we met were older men in tailored suits who spoke quietly and chose their words carefully. Their translator assisted us, but I understood enough to follow the gist. They were intrigued by my background in the restaurant industry and seemed pleased by Dina's thorough understanding of international trade laws. We spoke about supply chains, about forging relationships with tea farmers in Shizuoka and Kagoshima, about brand identity that would appeal to North American and European audiences. All the while, a voice in my head replayed the events from the divorce confrontation just days ago. I recalled Rosalie's furious expression, Harold's mocking grin, Bernard's threats. Yet outwardly I remained calm, my posture erect, answering business questions. At one point, I nearly felt a pang of guilt that I hadn't told these new associates the full story of my personal meltdown. But I reminded myself that none of it mattered here. Tokyo was a fresh start. My drama was half a world away. After the meeting, Dina and I stepped onto the street. She angled her head at me, eyebrows lifted. "They liked your pitch," she noted. "They're cautious, but they'll come around once we show them you're fully serious." I nodded, exhaling a breath. "I intend to be. My entire future hinges on this." She offered a sympathetic smile. "Remember, you're free now. Let's pour that energy into making something extraordinary." Meanwhile, back in the States, chaos simmered. I tried to maintain a certain distance, but I couldn't help checking a few messages from friends who updated me on the Rosalie situation. Harold had apparently tried to use his position at her company to spin some story about me being an absentee spouse, but since I was no longer even in the country, the office gossip quickly dried up. Bernard, on the other hand, was rumored to be under financial scrutiny for potential fraud, something about hush money payments flagged by certain authorities. My private detective had left me a cryptic note, confirming that local investigators were circling around Bernard. The biggest shock was hearing from an old neighbor that Rosalie, Harold, and the kids had moved into a cramped apartment after they failed to keep up with the motel costs. The neighbor also hinted that Savannah and Kenneth dropped out of their current college programs because I was no longer paying tuition. The neighbor asked if I was okay with that. My immediate thought, they're not my kids. Let Bernard or Harold pay. Then I felt a flicker of sadness. Did I ever love them? Sure. But they betrayed me. So let them feel consequences. My heart twisted, but I refused to dwell on it. I read that message while seated in a tiny ramen shop in Shibuya, slurping noodles in the corner. Dina had left me alone for the evening, giving me space. My appetite nearly vanished from the swirl of emotions, but I forced the noodles down. For so long, I'd prioritized them. Now I had to prioritize myself or I'd never heal. Within a week of my arrival, I secured a short-term lease on a small office near Shinjuku, just enough space for Dina and me to coordinate with potential suppliers. We'd begun drafting a brand outline for Sakura Leaf. Packaging designs, marketing angles, proposed lounge aesthetics. It almost felt surreal, working alongside Dina on something so creative while 1,000 unresolved issues lingered in the background of my old life. One afternoon, we hopped onto a conference call with an old contact of mine from the U.S. who specialized in restaurant PR. He was interested in partnering to launch a stateside branch once we had a solid supply chain and brand identity. I found it oddly liberating to talk about expansions and taste profiles of oolong or matcha rather than lawyers and betrayal. Dina hung up the call with a grin. "You see? You're unstoppable if you channel your focus." I nearly smiled back. Yeah, unstoppable. I liked the ring of that word. I was unstoppable, or at least I'd convinced myself of it. Because ironically, the heartbreak still gnawed at me, especially at night. But whenever the pain threatened to resurface, I threw myself deeper into the business. If I succeeded here, maybe I could bury the memory of Rosalie's final sneer forever. That same day, I overheard Dina on a phone call, calmly referencing Brian's ex-wife and paternity fraud. She wasn't gossiping, she was explaining to some legal associate in Vancouver about complexities that might arise if Rosalie tried to track me down for more money. But hearing it framed so clinically was jarring. Ex-wife, paternity fraud, terms that belonged in a salacious documentary, yet they were my reality. It reminded me how far I'd come from normalcy in just a few weeks. One morning I woke before sunrise, racked by a nightmare. In it, Rosalie and Harold stood in my old bedroom, laughing at me while Bernard held a giant gavel, slamming it repeatedly, chanting, "You owe us!" I woke in a cold sweat, my heart hammering. For a moment, disorientation gripped me. I forgot I was in Tokyo, thousands of miles away from them. I flicked on a lamp, noticing the clock read 4:15 a.m. A wave of vulnerability washed over me. I hated that they still had such power in my subconscious. By day, I was forging business deals and impressing investors, but at night, my psyche reminded me of the betrayal. I brewed a pot of green tea, slow, methodical, the way the tea masters taught. Watching the steam curl from the spout, I breathed in the grassy aroma, letting it anchor me. Sipping that first cup, I promised myself that day by day I'd reclaim my mind. They took my sense of fatherhood, they tried to take my assets, but they won't take my peace. That morning turned out to be pivotal. I decided once and for all to push forward with a formal incorporation of Sakura Leaf. Dina and I spent hours finalizing paperwork. We registered the company in Japan with an eye for expansions, ensuring none of my U.S. assets were entangled. I wanted to remain fully insulated from any further legal or financial claims by Rosalie or the kids. By late evening, we had the document signed. "Congratulations," Dina said, offering her hand. "Sakura Leaf is officially born." I shook her hand, managing a small smile. "Thank you for believing in me." While I focused on building something new, I kept receiving occasional updates about the meltdown stateside. Apparently, Rosalie had tried to consult another lawyer to see if she could claim anything internationally. But with the DNA proof and the fact that I'd liquidated or relocated assets outside her reach, she hit a dead end. Harold was rumored to be unemployed now, having resigned or been fired once the scandal of him moving in with a married woman leaked around their circles. Even Bernard faced intensifying scrutiny for shady financial dealings. I wasn't fully surprised my private detective had shared some evidence with certain parties, turning up the heat on Bernard. It sounded like Rosalie was teetering on the edge. An acquaintance messaged me that he'd seen her coming out of a modest law office downtown, looking haggard and desperate. She was apparently raging that she deserved a chunk of Brian's money after 20 years of marriage. The lawyer supposedly told her that with the paternity revelations, her case was crippled. She tried spinning emotional damages, but no serious attorney wanted that fight. The kids, too, were flailing. Kenneth and Savannah parted ways with Rosalie off and on, sometimes staying in the new apartment, sometimes couch surfing. They'd posted some bitter remarks on social media. "We can't believe Dad abandoned us." My breath caught when I read that, but I reminded myself, they're not my kids. They refuse to show any loyalty, so they're reaping what they sowed. At least that was my mantra, though a small ache lingered in my chest at the memory of birthdays and father-child moments that were apparently built on lies. Sometimes I worried I was being heartless. Then again, heartbreak can twist you into a new shape. In Tokyo, Dina and I established a rhythm. We'd meet with tea suppliers or potential investors during the day, visit the open-air markets in the evening, sampling teas and local delicacies. I found the culture enthralling, the delicate etiquette behind each handshake or business card exchange. It felt refreshing to be in a place where nobody viewed me as the cuckolded husband or the father with questionable kids. I was simply Brian, a foreign entrepreneur exploring a passion for premium teas. Over dinner one night, Dina and I discussed the branding concept in detail. She had a marketing friend in Canada who specialized in experiential design, the idea of letting customers immerse themselves in tea rituals, not just buy a product. The concept excited me. "Imagine," I said, "a storefront in Vancouver or New York, minimalist yet warm, where we guide people through a tasting flight of 4 different matches, culminating in a mindfulness ceremony." Dina sipped her sake, nodding with a half smile. "That's exactly the type of unique experience we can sell." It's not about chasing quick profit. It's about building a brand that merges authenticity with a modern twist. As we discussed, I noticed how easily we talked to each other like colleagues who'd known each other far longer than a month. I respected her direct, no-frills manner. She respected my dedication and how I refused to let my personal trauma hinder the business. A small voice in my head wondered if there was some romantic undercurrent forming, but I pushed that thought away. It was too soon. I was too raw. One afternoon, after finalizing a contract with a respected tea farm in Shizuoka, Dina and I took the bullet train back to Tokyo, the Japanese countryside whirled by the window's lush green fields, rolling hills. I felt a surge of optimism. Our negotiations had gone smoothly. The farm's owners trusted our vision, impressed by Dina's precise legal frameworks and my background in the restaurant scene. Sitting across from Dina in the sleek train car, I admitted, "It's strange how quickly life can pivot. A month ago, I was back home, clueless about my wife's affair. Now I'm in Japan, signing deals to import premium sencha leaves." She studied me. "Do you regret not confronting them earlier?" I paused, gazing at farmland whizzing past. "Sometimes I do, but if I'd confronted them in rage, they might have outmaneuvered me. This way, I took everything I needed quietly. And now, I searched for the right word. Free, I guess." She nodded, eyes thoughtful. "Freedom always comes at a price, doesn't it?" Her question lingered in the silent hum of the train. "Yeah," I said softly. "It cost me everything I thought I had. But if that was all based on a lie, maybe it's worth tearing down." Dina didn't push further. She merely offered a small smile that felt warmer than usual. We both returned to our respective thoughts, lulled by the rhythmic motion of the rails. Back at my apartment that night, I finally felt secure enough to call my parents. They'd been discreetly supportive but worried. They answered on speakerphone, voices echoing in the home where I grew up. Mom jumped in first. "Brian, sweetie, are you all right over there? We've heard all sorts of rumors about Rosalie." I chuckled darkly. "Yeah, rumors are probably true. She cheated, the kids aren't mine, I left. Not much else to say." My father cleared his throat. "We always thought something was off with that step-uncle Bernard. Are you sure you're safe from them legally?" I gave a quick summary of how I'd protected my assets and that I was forging a new business in Tokyo. My mother sighed with relief, though sadness laced her voice. "We're sorry you had to go through such heartbreak. You deserved better." I closed my eyes, imagining them in the living room, the old clock ticking. "Thanks," I said. "I'm rebuilding. I'd appreciate your moral support. Maybe your prayers, if that's still your thing." Mom said, "Of course it is, honey. We love you no matter what. Don't be a stranger." Ending that call, I felt an unexpected wave of gratitude. They might not fully understand my situation, nobody could unless they lived it, but at least they stood by me. For a fleeting moment, I pictured them visiting Tokyo, walking through the city, seeing my new life. The idea of that made me smile. As the second week in Tokyo ended, I stood in my new Sakura Leaf mini-office, leafing through the finalized paperwork. Dina was across from me, going over an electronic contract. We'd just penned a crucial agreement with a local distributor that would handle shipping to North America once we launched stateside. The scale of the project felt exhilarating, like the biggest risk and reward I'd ever taken. When Dina finished her calls, she turned to me. "We've done all we can from the legal side. Next steps are creative branding, building the consumer experience. Are you ready for that?" I gazed at the thick folder on the desk, bursting with ideas. "I'm ready," I murmured. "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or at least the next big chapter." She grinned in that soft, encouraging way. "Then let's do it. Tomorrow we'll visit a design agency in Shinjuku that works with luxury beverage brands. I set up an appointment." My heart thudded with anticipation. Perfect. In that moment, a swirl of emotions welled in me: resolve, hope, a cautious sense of joy. I'd lost my old life in a catastrophic betrayal, but now I was forging a new one. Let Rosalie and Harold squabble in that cramped apartment. Let Bernard dodge legal bullets. Let the kids reevaluate their mother's lies. I'm here, building something pure from the ashes. I allowed myself a final glance at Tokyo's skyline through the window. I inhaled deeply, feeling the subtle fragrance of green tea leaves we'd been sampling. It's time, I thought. Time to rise above everything they took from me. I remember the day we officially registered Sakura Leaf Inc. in Japan as a joyous milestone. Dina and I marked the occasion with a small celebratory dinner at a discreet restaurant overlooking the Sumida River. Through the wide glass windows, I watched the reflections of neon lights shimmer on the water's surface, and I almost felt normal, like a man who'd never experienced betrayal. That was the power of this city's energy. It cocooned me in the present, nudging away the past. But early the next morning, as we prepared for a meeting with a local marketing agency, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I ignored such calls, especially from American numbers. Yet something compelled me to answer. A panicked voice spoke. "Brian, this is Harold's co-worker. I don't even know if I should be calling you, but things have gotten ugly." My heart skipped a beat. The co-worker, a woman named Carla, revealed that Harold was in the hospital, severely beaten. Rosalie was also injured, apparently with a broken arm. Bernard's name came up, rumored to be involved in some confrontation. My initial reaction was disbelief, then anger. They wanted to cheat me and siphon my assets, now they're turning on each other? Carla explained in a rush that neighbors heard screaming in a dark parking lot, possibly scuffles with masked men. Rosalie told the cops she thinks Bernard orchestrated it, Carla said breathlessly. But no one's sure. Harold might never walk the same again. Some, permanent damage. I said nothing at first, my hand tightening around the phone. Part of me wanted to feel pity, but a colder part whispered, "They reap what they sow." Carla asked if I wanted to help them financially. I responded with a calm, no. Then I ended the call. Standing by the window, I stared at the skyline. This was a new level of drama I'd escaped by leaving. They can tear each other apart, I thought. I'm done. But inside, a tremor of unease flickered. Was Bernard truly that ruthless? I told Dina about the phone call. She listened, expression grave. If Bernard's behind some violent act, that's quite serious. But none of it touches you now that you're overseas. I nodded. I feel a sense of I don't know. Relief? That I avoided direct confrontation. Harold wanted to humiliate me, so maybe this is cosmic justice. She eyed me sympathetically. You sure you feel no guilt? I sighed. Maybe a pang. But let's be honest, he tried to move into my home, claiming my kids, my wife, my life. If he crossed Bernard or refused to pay back hush money, that's not on me. Dina nodded. Agreed. Just keep your distance. Don't let them suck you back into their chaos. Chaos indeed. Word spread quickly that Harold was incapacitated, might never regain full mobility, and had lost, as some rumors put it, his manhood. The brutality implied was unsettling. Rosalie nursed a broken arm. The kids, apparently traumatized, were staying woe knows where. Bernard disavowed involvement, but local whispers hinted he'd used henchmen to send a message. My detective occasionally updated me. I read each update with detached fascination. My heart felt numb to their plight, as though I'd turned off my empathy switch, while that fire burned in the USI turned up the heat on building Sakura Leaf. Dina and I visited a top-tier design agency in Shinjuku, meeting a flamboyant creative director named Yusuke. He had a shock of bleached hair and wore bright patterned suits, exuding confidence. He listened to our brand pitch, combining minimalistic Japanese elegance with a storyline that would resonate overseas. Yusuke was enthralled. We can do something radical, bridging the tea ceremony tradition with a contemporary, almost futuristic aesthetic, he said, hands gesturing wildly. Customers walk into a serene environment, soft lighting, curated music, then they watch the tea prepared by staff trained in classical methods. It's a collision of old and new. I found myself smiling for the first time in days. Exactly, I said. Tea is often seen as old-fashioned or niche. I want it to become an immersive lifestyle. We brainstormed brand colors, from gentle pastel greens to bold gold accents. Dina chimed in with legal aspects, trademarks, licensing. Our synergy was incredible, and for hours I was so swept up in creative passion that I forgot my personal history. This was the therapy I never realized I needed, pouring my heartbreak into a new venture, shaping a brand from the ground up. By the time we left the agency, the setting sun painted Shinjuku's buildings in orange and pink hues. Yusuke bowed politely, promising to have conceptual sketches by next week. Dina and I shared relieved smiles, knowing we'd found the perfect collaborator. In the taxi ride back, Dina mused, "This feels like we're on the brink of something huge." I gazed out at neon signs flickering to life. We are, and it's the first time in ages I feel truly alive. But the pangs of my old life still found ways to jab at me. Late one evening, I got an email from Rosalie Long, rambling and desperate. She wrote about how Harold was hospitalized, how she was physically in pain, how their finances were wrecked, and she begged me for help on behalf of the kids. She said, "We have nowhere else to turn. We can't pay rent, the kids can't go to college. I'm sorry for the past, but we need you." My eyes flicked over the lines, a wave of memories hitting me. She tried to appeal to my fatherly instincts, referencing the kids' childhood stories, soccer games, piano recitals, Christmas mornings. It stung, remembering how real those moments felt. Yet the DNA truth overshadowed it all. I typed a brief reply. "Harold isn't my responsibility, neither are you. The kids are not mine biologically, so I'm not paying. I gave you everything for 20 years. You repaid me with betrayal. This is the consequence." Then I hit send. My heart pounded, but I felt no regret. Seconds later, my phone buzzed with a second email from her. Another meltdown. I didn't bother reading it. No. If I cracked now, I'd slip back into a vortex of manipulation. I'd rather remain the cold, distant figure in her eyes, free from further entanglements. Dina filtered a lot of Rosalie's attempts to contact me. She explained that as my legal representative, she had the right to block certain communications that were harassing or manipulative. That shield was a godsend, letting me focus on the brand's development rather than Rosalie's pleas. However, one morning, Dina did forward me a short message from the kids themselves. "Dad, if it's okay to still call you that, we realize you have no legal obligation, but we hoped you might remember the bonds we shared. We messed up, sure, but we're still human. Could you at least help with some college fees so we can get back to school? Mom's meltdown is destroying everything." Reading that, my chest tightened. They said we messed up. That's the first time they've even acknowledged wrongdoing. A pang of fatherly nostalgia coiled in my gut. But then logic reminded me they'd shown no loyalty when it mattered, cast me aside for Harold. Now that Harold is crippled and Rosalie is broke, they turn to me for a lifeline. I typed a single line back. "No, if you want money, ask your real father, Bernard." I ended it there. After hitting send, I buried my head in my hands, exhaling sharply. Dina glanced over, concerned. I just shook my head. "I need to keep that door closed," I whispered, "no matter how it hurts." Amidst this emotional seesaw, Sakura Leaf took shape at a dazzling pace. Yusuke presented us with mesmerizing design mock-ups. The brand's color palette, soft jade green, accented by subtle gold and white, felt luxurious yet welcoming. The proposed logo featured a stylized cherry blossom petal cradling a teacup, a nod to both Japanese tradition and an international appeal. We drafted an initial business plan for a pilot store in Tokyo, small, upscale, near Harajuku or Omotesando, where locals and tourists mingle. Dina worked her legal magic, ensuring property leasing terms favored us. Meanwhile, I conceptualized the interior layout: a quiet lounge area, a small demonstration bar for tea ceremonies, a retail corner for packaged leaves and brewing accessories. We aimed to open in a few months if all went smoothly. Even in the thick of planning, I found moments to appreciate Tokyo's culture. Some evenings I wandered alone through narrow alleys lined with tiny bars, letting the city's hum wash over me. Seeing couples laughing, friends chatting, it brought a bittersweet sense that life moves on no matter what storms we face. On one such night, I stepped into a hidden sake bar with only 4 seats. The bartender had impeccable English. We struck up a conversation about how heartbreak can lead one to new horizons. By the time I left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The darkness of my old life was still there, but the light of possibility burned brighter each day. Back in the U.S., from what I heard, Bernard faced mounting legal trouble. The hush money fiasco, combined with possible corporate fraud, placed him under investigation. My detective forwarded some cryptic lines about how Bernard was losing his grip on power. If indicted, he might face serious charges. Rosalie was rumored to be in total meltdown mode, blaming Bernard, blaming Harold, blaming me. Harold, on strong pain meds, was mostly inert. The detective also hinted that Rosalie might attempt to track me down in Tokyo. She had apparently told some acquaintances she planned to fly out there and confront him face to face. But with her finances in ruin, that talk might be empty. She was desperate. My only worry was that she'd make a scene at our prospective store or try to sabotage my new business out of spite. Dina reassured me that short of illegal harassment or defamation, Rosalie had no legal standing in Japan. And if she tries, we'll get a restraining order, Dina said with calm confidence. Don't let fear distract you. I nodded, grateful. Still, a small part of me braced for the day Rosalie might appear out of nowhere, weeping or raging in front of my new colleagues. The thought put me on edge, but it also steeled my resolve. If she came, I'd show her the same cold front as before. I'd let no one shatter this fresh start. One day, after a productive design review session, Dina and I strolled through a tranquil public garden near the Imperial Palace. Cherry blossom season was just beginning, a few early blooms adding a pinkish hue to the branches. We paused on a wooden bench, enjoying the delicate scent in the air. She turned to me, a warm softness in her eyes. How are you really holding up, Brian? We've been sprinting through business stuff, but I know heartbreak doesn't vanish overnight. I exhaled, letting my gaze settle on a cluster of blossoms swaying in the breeze. I won't lie, it hurts in waves. Sometimes I'm fine for hours, then a single memory of Kenneth or Savannah will punch me in the gut. Or I'll think about the nights I spent believing Rosalie was a faithful partner, and I feel anger. But each day, the weight lifts a bit. This new project, it's like therapy. She nodded. I understand. It's good you're being honest with yourself. Building a business can distract you, but healing is also about letting the pain process. I appreciated her empathy. For a moment, the hush of the garden enveloped us. Then she gently placed a hand on my shoulder, a simple, comforting gesture. A swirl of conflicting emotions rose in me: gratitude, relief, perhaps a flicker of attraction. But we kept it professional in that moment, just two people who'd faced storms and were forging a path forward. Eventually, we left the garden, returning to the bustle of Tokyo. My chest felt lighter, as though those pink blossoms had whispered a promise of renewal. Weeks passed. Sakura Leaf's pilot location concept firmed up. Yusuke found a narrow space in a chic area near Omotesando. High foot traffic, upscale crowd. The rent was steep, but the potential was enormous. Dina and I visited, stepping over dusty floors and imagining how we'd transform it into a tranquil, modern tea oasis. During that time, we also finalized packaging designs. I insisted on top-quality tins and pouches, each labeled with tasteful gold-embossed script. Our stock of curated teas was growing. We had 4 core lines: sencha, matcha, gyokuro, and a blended herbal line for more casual drinkers. We aimed to launch online sales globally, then open the lounge as our showcase. I poured more money into it than I'd ever poured into a single venture. And ironically, it wasn't fear that drove me, but a fierce conviction that I must succeed. Failing would feel like letting Rosalie's betrayal overshadow me again. So I pushed day and night, ignoring exhaustion. Whenever I glimpsed the time, it was usually past midnight, but Dina, equally tireless, just laughed and kept working. She teased me that I might become a bigger workaholic than I ever was in the States. I replied that I'd rather be a workaholic than let heartbreak define me. One late evening, over takeout noodles in the half-finished lounge space, Dina joked, "We should probably see if the real reason you wanted a tea lounge was to keep from going insane after your divorce." I half smiled, leaning on a stack of unopened chairs. Could be. Some men find a rebound relationship. I found a rebound enterprise. We shared a quiet chuckle, and for once, I felt content. My old life seemed distant, a murky dream overshadowed by the tangible progress around me. Just as everything was rolling in Tokyo, I received a short text from my detective: Rosalie flying to Japan next week. That single line made my stomach jolt. So it wasn't just talk she'd found a way. possibly borrowed money, or maybe Bernard coughed up hush funds to get her off his back. My detective added, "She's telling acquaintances she'll confront you, demand help for kids, possibly cause a scene." I inhaled, rereading the text. Dina, noticing my tense expression, asked softly, "Bad news," I told her. She frowned, then placed a hand on my arm. "Let's prepare. If Rosalie sets foot in our lounge or tries to harass you at your apartment, we'll contact local authorities." Inside me, a swirl of anticipation warred with dread. Why is she coming? Because she was desperate, or because she wanted to manipulate me face to face? Did she think I'd melt under pleas or tears? Despite my outward composure, my heartbeat thrummed. This city was my sanctuary. Now she threatens to invade it. But I reminded myself, I'm not the same man who got sucker-punched by that affair. I'm in control now. Still, as I locked up the lounge that night, I couldn't fully shake the anxiety. If Rosalie appeared, how would I truly handle it? Calmly shutting her down, or unleashing a fury I'd kept bottled up? Only time would tell. The countdown to Rosalie's arrival weighed on me like a ticking bomb. Part of me hoped she'd flake, that her finances would collapse before she could buy the ticket. But according to my detective, she'd already secured a flight. So in the days leading up to that, I immersed myself even deeper in finalizing Sakura Leaf's interior design and product lineup. If she wanted to corner me, I'd have so much momentum she could never derail it. Yusuke's team had begun minor renovations on the Omotesando space, installing a sleek wooden bar, painting the walls in muted tones, setting up recessed lighting. Dina and I spent hours selecting music tracks that would play softly in the lounge instrumental pieces with subtle Eastern elements, but also hints of modern ambient beats. It was borderline obsessive how precise we wanted the atmosphere. One late evening, I was alone in the lounge, checking the fit of new furniture. The city's quiet hum filtered through half-open windows. Even with exhaustion pressing behind my eyes, I felt a sense of pride. This place was real. My dream was manifesting. A month ago, I was a shattered husband escaping betrayal. Now, I was about to open a high-end tea lounge in one of the world's most dynamic cities. Still, the ghost of Rosalie hovered at the edges of my mind. She was coming, and I suspected her arrival would be messy. 2 days before she landed, I got an unexpected email from Savannah. Short, blunt. "We're trying to pick up the pieces here. Mom says you're ignoring her calls. Kenneth and I don't want more drama, but we do want a future. If you can't help financially, can you at least talk to us? We feel lost." I slumped back in my office chair, rereading that. Did I believe they were genuinely remorseful, or was this a manipulative tactic? Dina encouraged me to keep boundaries. "Reply if you like, but don't open a door you're not ready to handle." In a moment of weary impulse, I typed a reply. "I tried being your father for 20 years, only to discover I never was. If you want a future, build it yourselves or ask Bernard. I can't fix what Rosalie's done." I hovered over the send button, wrestling with guilt. Then I clicked it. My chest felt simultaneously heavier and lighter. That night, I stared at the Tokyo skyline from my apartment balcony, sipping a delicate Gyokuro tea. The flavor was rich, sweet, with a subtle vegetal note. A swirl of conflicting emotions battered me. I recalled teaching Savannah how to ride a bike or helping Kenneth with algebra homework. They were real memories, but overshadowed by lies. My eyes stung, but I refused to cry. They're not my kids, I reminded myself, just illusions. And so I stood there, letting the city's neon glow envelop me, forcing my tears to remain unshed. When Rosalie's flight touched down, my detective sent a quick text. "She's here, staying at a cheap hotel near Shinjuku. She looks rough." I tried to keep my day normal. Dina and I were slated to meet a prospective chef who specialized in wagashi Japanese confections that might complement our teas. The meeting was in a small test kitchen. While the chef demonstrated sugar sculpting techniques for creating delicate sweets, I found it oddly mesmerizing. Each swirl of dough, each careful garnish, was an art in itself. But my phone kept buzzing with unknown numbers. I ignored them. Dina's phone buzzed, too. She checked once, grimaced, and silenced it. After the chef finished, we stepped outside to a courtyard. Dina inhaled, exasperated. "Rosalie's calling me. She wants your location." I felt a jolt of annoyance. "Did you tell her anything?" Dina shook her head vigorously. "Of course not. I refused. She's trying to guilt-trip me, saying I'm enabling you to abandon her. She claims she just wants to talk face-to-face. My jaw tightened. I have no interest in conversation, but she might show up anywhere if she's resourceful. We decided to alert local authorities if she attempted harassment. Dina reminded me, if she appears at the lounge, we'll call security. Don't let her drama overshadow your progress. I appreciated Dina's unwavering stance. Still, a part of me dreaded the confrontation, because I knew the second I laid eyes on Rosalie in person, all that buried pain might flare up. I had to be ready to remain cold to ensure she couldn't manipulate me again. Sure enough, Rosalie's first attempt came that same evening. She somehow found my apartment building in Shibuya, likely from old references or speculation. The building's doorman called up, saying a distraught foreign woman was demanding to see me. I told him firmly, I do not authorize her to enter. The doorman complied, sending her away. Minutes later, my phone blew up with calls from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Then texts. Brian, I'm in Tokyo for you. Don't do this. I just want to talk! I powered off the device. My heart hammered with the weight of it all. Let her scream at the door. I owe her nothing. That night, I had trouble sleeping, imagining her pacing outside in the city's neon-lit streets, scrounging for ways to corner me. In the dark, a small voice whispered, what if she's truly desperate, physically injured, emotionally wrecked? Another harsher voice retorted, she made her bed with Harold and Bernard. Let them fix it. At 2 a.m., I found myself pacing the living room. The city below was quiet. My reflection in the glass looked drawn, haunted by old ties that refused to break. I told myself, you are strong, you are free, repeating it like a mantra. Eventually, exhaustion took me and I fell asleep on the couch. The next day, Dina texted me from the lounge. Rosalie is here. She showed up. We have security stationed. Please advise. My pulse leapt. I quickly grabbed a cab, mind racing. At the lounge, I found Dina near the entrance looking tense. A uniformed security guard stood with arms folded. Inside, I glimpsed Rosalie wearing an oversized jacket, hair disheveled, her left arm in a sling. She looked pale, eyes brimming with a mix of anger and desperation. Dina said quietly, she demanded to see you. I told her you might not come, but I figured you'd want to handle this on your terms. I nodded, steeling myself, then walked inside. The partially renovated lounge was scattered with boxes of tiles and paint cans. Rosalie turned as I entered. Her eyes widened, relief and torment mingling on her face. Brian, she gasped, her voice ragged. You're here! I forced a flat expression. What do you want, Rosalie? She swallowed hard, tears glistening. I know you hate me, but you have to understand what's happened. Harold is crippled. I've got no money. The kids, I cut in, voice cold. So you flew halfway around the world to whine about your problems. You betrayed me. You lied about the kids' paternity. Now you want sympathy? She shook her head frantically. No, the kids are innocent, Brian. They need help. Savannah and Kenneth can't get through college. We can't pay rent. Bernard turned on us. He might kill us next. Please, for old time's sake. The mention of old times stung. My anger flared. Old times? You mean the times you pretended we were a normal family while you messed around with your step-uncle? While you let me raise kids that weren't mine? She trembled. I was scared. Manipulated. Bernard forced me. Said if I didn't keep you in the dark, he'd cut me off. I was naive. My voice rose. Naive? That's your excuse? You told me you loved me. Let me believe I was a father. You milked my finances for years. You even tried to scam me in the divorce settlement. Don't talk about fear and manipulation as if you were powerless. She flinched as though I'd struck her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I know. I was wrong. I'm sorry, but please, I can't let the kids starve. They idolized you. They just got confused. My heart twisted, but I stayed firm. They turned on me the moment you gave them an excuse. They're grown. Let Bernard feed them or let them work part-time. I'm done. She tried to step closer, but the security guard blocked her. Her voice shook with desperation. But you used to say you'd always be there for them, no matter what. They still see you as a father figure. A bitter laugh escaped me. Father figure. They ridiculed me. Let Harold wear my robe. Told me not to come home. That's not how children treat a father. And biologically, I have no link to them. She wept openly. You can't be this cruel. Didn't you love them at all? I swallowed the ache in my throat. I did. But that love was built on lies, and after seeing how easily they shoved me aside, I can't muster any compassion. Now please leave. She sobbed uncontrollably, eyes darting around the lounge. Brian, I'll do anything, just help me get them stable. I'll vanish afterward, I promise, I'm sorry. Harold is worthless now. I glared. Don't mention Harold. I don't care if he rots. She tried once more. We had 20 years, I practically roared, which you defiled by letting me raise children fathered by your step-uncle. Enough. The echo of my shout startled even me. I'd never yelled at her like that before. But the anger burned hot. Get out, I said, voice trembling with fury. Don't ever come near me or my business again. Rosalie recoiled, tears streaking her face. She took a shaky step back, hugging her injured arm. Her voice was just a whisper now. Brian, I never wanted it to end like this. I snorted, pointing at the door. Too bad. This is how it ends. Security guided her out, Dina at my side. Rosalie wailed, Brian, please! But I refused to look. She stumbled onto the sidewalk, passers-by glancing curiously at the scene. Dina and the guard ensured she moved along. I stood inside, shoulders heaving from the adrenaline. My eyes stung with unshed tears, but I clenched my fists. I refused to let her see me cry. Eventually, Dina returned, placing a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I sighed shakily. No, but I will be. She nodded with understanding, gave me space. For several minutes, I paced among the boxes of tiles, calming my racing heart. In my mind, I replayed Rosalie's tear-streaked face, remembering that once I loved her enough to vow my life to her. Now I'd told her to vanish. That's how far we've fallen, I mused. So be it. After that confrontation, Rosalie tried calling me more. I continued ignoring it. Dina blocked her on every channel. She turned up at the lounge once more, but security was ready. They turned her away before I even knew she was there. The police might have intervened if she persisted, but apparently she gave up. My detective said she then spent a couple of days drifting around cheap hostels, presumably running out of cash. Rumor had it she attempted to approach some local expat community gatherings, maybe to find a sympathetic ear or someone to loan her money. But Tokyo can be isolating if you lack resources. Eventually, she booked a return flight, no clue how. Perhaps she sold whatever valuables she had left or borrowed from a friend. She likely realized there was no warm welcome here. Meanwhile, I struggled to process the swirl of emotions left by her frantic pleas. Part of me felt cruel for refusing to help. Another part insisted they'd all betrayed me, so any kindness now would be a sign of weakness. I had to stand my ground. I told myself that no matter how pitiful her tears, she had the kids with her, and presumably they could figure out survival. Or if not, let them face the consequences. Still, a small thread of sorrow lingered in my heart. I never wished them physical harm or total ruin, I admitted to myself, but heartbreak made me ruthless. In the days after her final departure from Tokyo, I noticed a shift in my own psyche. I felt freer, as if seeing her in person and rejecting her pleas had closed a painful chapter. She had come, tried to manipulate me with tears, and failed. The next phase was fully embracing my new life and letting the old wounds scar over. Sakura Leaf progressed rapidly. The lounge's interior neared completion, a sleek wooden bar, tasteful decor, a curated playlist. Our official product packaging arrived, each tin glinting with gold trim. Yusuke orchestrated the furniture layout, final touches of lighting, and subtle signage. We set a soft opening date for a small crowd local influencers, a few business connections, no big media push yet. Dina believed in an exclusive launch approach, building word-of-mouth hype before we expanded stateside. On a personal note, I slept better. The nightmares of Rosalie and Harold receded, replaced by dreams of matcha ceremonies and quiet, zen-like images. Occasionally, I'd remember the kids, but it was less painful now. They'd made their choice. I had made mine. One evening, Dina and I sat at the new bar inside the lounge, sampling a final batch of teas. The overhead lighting cast a gentle glow on the newly polished counters. She raised a cup, smiling at me. Here's to your official rebirth, she teased. Brian 2, 0, the unstoppable tea mogul. I chuckled. $2,000 a word maybe, but I'll take it. We clinked cups gently, sipping the fresh vegetal brew. In the silence that followed, I realized how grateful I was for her unwavering support. She'd seen me at my lowest, aided me in every legal detail, and believed in my vision. "Is that purely professional?" a voice whispered. I shoved the thought aside. I wasn't ready for more complexities. For now, business synergy was enough. As we locked up that night, I paused near the door, gazing around the finished lounge, soft-lit, elegant, exuding calm. My heart swelled with pride. "Tomorrow's the soft opening. Hard to believe," I murmured. Dina stood beside me. "You've come a long way in a short time," she said softly. "From heartbreak to this." I exhaled, letting the memories wash over me. The betrayal, the discovery of false paternity, the raging confrontation in the restaurant, the move to Tokyo, building Sakura Leaf from scratch, Rosalie's final tearful pleas. It felt like I'd lived multiple lives in a matter of months. But here I was, alive, forging forward. I flicked off the main lights. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of what we've built." Dina smiled, eyes reflecting the hallway's faint glow. "You should be. This is only the beginning." We stepped out onto the quiet Tokyo street, locking the door behind us. I took one last glance at the tasteful sign displaying our logo, the stylized cherry blossom petal cradling a teacup. Yes, I thought, it's only the beginning. And with that, we walked away, side by side, into the luminous Tokyo night, leaving behind the final echoes of Rosalie's desperate visit. I no longer felt fear or regret, just a calm acceptance that I'd faced my past and chosen my own path forward. Tomorrow we'd open the doors to a new chapter of my life, one brimming with possibility. The morning of Sakura Leaf's soft opening felt like a rebirth. I arrived at the lounge hours before the scheduled time, standing quietly in the center of the newly furnished space. Rows of brand-new tins, our curated sencha, matcha, gyokuro, and herbal blends lined elegant wooden shelves, each illuminated by soft, recessed lighting. The atmosphere we'd painstakingly crafted was alive, gentle instrumental music playing overhead, delicate aromas swirling from test brews at the bar, and the hush of Tokyo's early bustle just outside. Dina joined me soon after, stepping in with a purposeful stride. She wore a crisp white blouse and a calm smile, embodying the poised professionalism that had become our trademark. "Everything ready?" she asked, voice hushed in the lounge's tranquility. I nodded, heart thudding. "Yeah, I think so." We'd invited a small list of local influencers, food bloggers, and a handful of potential investors, nothing huge, but enough to create a spark of publicity. I should have been brimming with excitement, but a lingering tension coiled in my gut remnants of Rosalie's intrusion days earlier. Yet, scanning the warm, polished interior, I felt a swell of pride. This space was mine, shaped from the ashes of heartbreak. Our first guest arrived right at noon, a friendly local blogger with a modest camera. She gasped in delight at the lounge's decor, praising the gentle lighting and minimalist design. Her enthusiasm was contagious. Gradually, more arrived, and the lounge filled with soft chatter. Servers we'd hired for the day poured matcha in small, handcrafted bowls, bowing politely as they presented each cup. Halfway through the afternoon, I found myself explaining the origins of our gyokuro leaves to a small group, describing how the shading process intensifies the sweetness. They listened with keen interest, snapping photos. Each question about my passion or the brand's vision reminded me how far I'd come. For a moment, the name Rosalie never crossed my mind. This was my world now: tea, authenticity, a refined experience. By late afternoon, the soft opening was an undeniable success. A few visitors murmured about how transported they felt the hush of the lounge, and the ceremonial approach to tea offered a slice of calm in the city's hectic pace. One middle-aged businessman said, "I feel like I've momentarily escaped everyday stress. I'd come here regularly just to unwind." Hearing that made my chest tighten with gratitude. Sakura Leaf might truly become a sanctuary, I thought. Dina joined me near the bar, where she'd been quietly conversing with a potential investor. He'd left with a promise to discuss further financing. She touched my arm lightly. "This is going even better than we planned," she whispered. "People are fascinated by the concept. We've had at least 3 serious inquiries about franchising. I looked around, spotting Yusuke, the design genius, chatting animatedly with a group of younger influencers. They snapped pictures of each fixture, the cherry blossom petal logo, the meticulously labeled tea tins. My shoulders relaxed, tension replaced by a sense of accomplishment. The work paid off, I replied softly. All those sleepless nights, all that heartbreak fueling my determination, it's culminating in this. She nodded, eyes reflecting the warm overhead glow. Exactly. You channeled every ounce of pain into creation. I smiled, turning to watch guests sipping from delicate cups. The swirl of green matcha, the subdued lighting, the faint strains of music, it felt like stepping into a vision I'd once scribbled in a notepad, now made real. Part of me wanted to cry from relief. I still have a future, I thought. I can still carve out happiness. Amid the soft lounge success, updates from the U.S. continued trickling in. The detective emailed me that Bernard's legal troubles were accelerating. A formal indictment loomed for his alleged corporate fraud and money laundering antics. Meanwhile, Rosalie had apparently flown back with near-empty pockets. She must have realized I wouldn't cave. The kids, Savannah and Kenneth, were bouncing between part-time jobs, still living hand-to-mouth. Harold remained mostly bedridden in a dingy apartment, reliant on pain meds. The entire group existed like a sinking ship, each occupant bailing water with a broken bucket. One night, while scanning these updates on my phone, my emotions tangled. A slice of me felt a grim satisfaction they'd reaped the chaos they sowed. Another slice, though, fluttered with pity. We'd once shared 2 decades under one roof. I remembered the kids' bright smiles when they were younger, the family dinners that now felt like illusions. Is it possible I can move on while they collapse entirely? I wondered. Then I reminded myself, yes, it's possible and necessary. They wrote me off first. I forwarded the detective's email to Dina with a short note. No action needed, just an FYI. She responded within minutes. Focus on the lounge. They're not your problem anymore. It was precisely what I needed to read. I tapped out a quick thank you and forced my mind back to tea blends and store expansions. Meanwhile, Dina and I formed a routine. Most mornings we'd meet early at the lounge, sample fresh brews, discuss daily objectives. The staff we hired, a mix of local baristas and part-time servers, quickly adapted to our concept, embracing the ceremonial elements with enthusiasm. Some even started tossing around ideas for monthly tea flights, pairing certain brews with wagashi or light pastries. The synergy boosted my confidence further. In the evenings, once we locked up, Dina and I often ventured out to explore Tokyo's culinary scene, sometimes with Yusuke or a few new acquaintances, sometimes just the two of us. Our conversations touched on everything: marketing strategies, expansions to other districts, rumors about big beverage corporations showing interest. We discovered we both shared a love for quiet jazz bars, popping into small underground spots where a lone saxophonist might serenade a rapt audience. One such night, as we strolled beside the softly lit canal near Nakamaguro, Dina nudged me. You realize you've barely mentioned your old life in weeks. Her tone held a note of reassurance, like she was proud. I paused, watching cherry blossom petals drift on the water. I guess there's less to say. I feel the past loosening its grip. She offered a gentle smile. That's good. Healing, in motion. I inhaled, the night air cool on my skin, and let a flicker of gratitude warm my chest. It's your help too, I murmured. You and this city and the dream we're building here. But as success blossomed, I soon realized the kids hadn't given up on contacting me. Kenneth mostly. He emailed with a new tone, more humble, less angry. He wrote lines like, Dad, if it's okay, I call you that I'm not asking for money, just a conversation. We messed up. We see that now. If we promise to stand on our own feet, can we at least keep a line of communication open? Reading his words triggered a swirling ache in me. Even though I knew he wasn't biologically mine, we shared countless father-son moments. My rational mind argued, he's an adult, he can handle himself. But an emotional part whispered, he's still a kid you raised. That duality tore at my resolve. I forwarded the email to Dina with a question. Should I respond? She wrote back, up to you. But remember the heartbreak they caused. Don't let guilt overshadow your boundaries. In the end, I typed a cautious reply. I can't go back to being your father, but if you want to chat occasionally to explain your life, I won't block you. I won't fund you either. You made your bed. You can fix your future. Good luck. Hitting send, I closed my laptop, breath trembling. My chest felt heavy, but I reminded myself this was the only path. Limited communication, zero financial ties. I refused to be reeled into their drama again. Amid these personal tremors, our lounge soared in popularity. Word of mouth rippled through Tokyo's foodie circles. A tranquil haven for authentic tea ceremonies with a modern twist, read one local magazine's snippet. Lines formed outside on weekends, mostly curious locals and a sprinkling of international visitors. Yushike suggested we consider a reservation system for evening tea tastings. Our staff quickly adapted, scheduling hour-long sessions where guests could immerse themselves in multiple brews and short educational talks. We also launched a limited online store for shipping tea abroad. Orders trickled in from Canada, the US, even some pockets of Europe. I found myself working late nights to ensure inventory, labeling each package precisely. In those quiet hours, I'd glance at the lounge's empty seats and remember the day Rosalie stood there tearful. But the memory had dulled, overshadowed by the lounge's calm glow and the warm sense of accomplishment that radiated from every table. One day, Dina approached me with a grin. "We're nearly profitable in under 2 months," she said, voice tinged with amazement. "Most small businesses don't break even so fast." I exhaled, a gentle satisfaction coursing through me. "A testament to the concept and to the unwavering push we gave it." She nodded. "And your story helps in a strange way. This entire brand was born from your determination to rebuild." Her words lingered in my mind. I recalled how I first dreamed up a tea concept, but it truly solidified once my life collapsed. If heartbreak spurred something beautiful, maybe I can accept the heartbreak, I thought. That sense of acceptance soothed me more than any fleeting revenge ever could. However, the ghosts of my old life still wandered. Late one evening, I arrived home to find a single envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a crumpled letter from Rosalie, penned in shaky handwriting. She must have done some detective work to figure out where I lived, or someone in the building inadvertently accepted it. My pulse quickened reading the first line. "Brian, I'm sorry I made a scene at your lounge, but we need to talk one last time." She insisted the kids were struggling mentally, that Kenneth might drop into depression, that Savannah was considering dangerous ways to earn money. She begged me to reconsider any form of assistance. She wrote, "They looked up to you their entire lives, and even if you're not blood, you were their father at heart." The letter ended with a plaintive, "I know I'm beyond your forgiveness, but don't let the kids drown because of me. Please." My hands shook. A swirl of guilt, anger, protectiveness, heartbreak. She's playing the kids card again, I told myself. But the mention of mental health triggered deep concern. They'd always been normal. Spirited teens, could they really be spiraling? Or was Rosalie exaggerating? I debated contacting Kenneth directly to see if it was true, but that might open more drama. Instead, I flicked the letter into a shredder. My life no longer revolved around Rosalie's pleas. They're grown, I reminded myself. They have to figure it out. Still, an uneasy feeling shadowed me as I stood alone in my quiet apartment. Through it all, Dina remained my steadfast ally. We scheduled business dinners with potential North American partners who happened to be in Tokyo. Our brand's strong early showing sparked their interest. They pitched expansions into Vancouver or Los Angeles, using pop-up tea bars to test markets. At one meeting, over a sumptuous meal of kaiseki cuisine, I could hardly concentrate on the intricately plated dishes because of the swirl of possibilities. When the partners asked about my personal story, why I left the U.S. to start a tea lounge, Dina expertly pivoted the conversation to the brand's philosophy, subtly shielding my private woes. I was grateful. The last thing I wanted was to confirm rumors that I was an estranged father or a scorned husband. The new me thrived on positivity, on forging a path free of pity. After dinner, Dina and I strolled along lantern-lit streets. She wore a satisfied expression. "They'll likely invest if we finalize a good pitch deck," she said. I nodded, mind buzzing with expansions and brand synergy. Then I paused, glancing her way. You've shielded me a lot from personal inquiries. I appreciate that. I'm not sure how to repay you. She gave a small laugh. We're partners, Brian, and I happen to find your resilience inspiring. Plus, we have a good thing going with Sakura Leaf. Let's call it mutual benefit. In the back of my thoughts, I recognized an undeniable closeness forming. Not just professional respect, but a subtle emotional bond. Even if neither of us openly acknowledged it yet, it shimmered there, a comforting backdrop to our shared ambitions. I let it be, telling myself that for now, it was enough to have a friend and partner who truly understood me. Weeks melted into a couple of months. Sakura Leaf's lounge thrived. We rotated new seasonal offerings, forging loyal customers who came weekly. I started hosting small, intimate tea appreciation classes, teaching guests the nuances of water temperature, steeping times, and the history behind each leaf type. Standing in front of 5 or 6 eager learners, I felt a sense of purpose I'd never quite had even back in my restaurant investor days. But one morning, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Usually I ignored such calls, but something told me to pick up. It was Kenneth, voice trembling. Dad? I know you said no money. I'm not calling for that. Savannah's in the hospital. My heart froze. What happened? He stammered. She tried something stupid, some pills. She said she felt worthless. She's stable now, but I am losing it, Dad. We have no real home, no guidance, no support. He sniffed, a raw vulnerability in his tone. I'm sorry if this is manipulative to call, but I were alone. I just wanted you to know. I felt as though a giant fist squeezed my chest. Savannah attempted something? Despite my anger and betrayal, the thought of her lying in a hospital bed cut deep. Did she overdose intentionally? I managed, voice cracking. He hesitated. I think so. She's been depressed. We got stuck in that rundown apartment. Harold can't move. Mom's off who knows where. Bernard's in legal hell. Savannah felt trapped. Dad, please. My mind spun. This was new territory. I couldn't just detach from a suicidal young woman who once called me Dad, but I also couldn't revert to being their caretaker. Kenneth, I said quietly, I'm sorry you're both in pain, but you need professional help. Not me swooping in to fix everything. Does she have any friends or therapy options? He exhaled shakily. She's on a 72-hour psych hold. Insurance is spotty. I'm picking up odd jobs. Mom's vanished, maybe chasing you again. I don't even know. Please, just can you talk to her? She might listen to your voice. My throat tightened. That paternal instinct flared, warring against all logic. Send me her hospital number, I finally said. I'll call to see if I can get a message through. That's all I can promise. He breathed a thank you. Before we ended, he whispered, I'm sorry for all we did. We were blind. Then the line cut. I slumped on my couch, tears threatening. I never wanted them physically destroyed by this fiasco. But was it my duty to rescue them now? Or was I risking Rosalie's manipulations again? The confusion tore at me like claws. They're not my blood, but they were my children. Eventually, I forced myself to stand, swallowing the lump in my throat. I'll try to see if I can help Savannah in a minimal way, but no more. Because as much as I wanted to remain firm, I also couldn't ignore a call for help from a suicidal young woman I once called my daughter. That day, I told Dina about Kenneth's call. She listened with a sober expression. I'm sorry, that's awful. I confessed my plan. I might call the hospital, see if there's anything I can do from a distance, like ensuring she has therapy coverage. But I'm not going to funnel money to Rosalie or Harold. Dina placed a hand on my arm. It's a delicate line. I get that you can't stand by and watch someone you once raised self-destruct, but be cautious not to get dragged into the same manipulations. Maybe there's a mental health charity or a local resource you can direct them to. Her suggestion lifted a small weight off my chest. Yes, I can try to help without reopening the door to being their full-time caretaker. So, after much deliberation, I called the hospital, inquired discreetly if they had any social worker programs or charitable supports for suicidal patients. They said they did, though I wasn't immediate family, so details were limited. I left a message for Savannah. A short voice note saying I was sorry she felt so hopeless, that I hoped she'd accept professional help, that life could improve if she kept fighting. Hanging up, tears dampened my cheeks. I hated that I was stuck in this cold, lukewarm approach. But I had to protect myself. The heartbreak of losing them as my kids was a scar that still throbbed. I told myself I'd done the best I could under the circumstances. Then I returned to the lounge, forging on with a new promotional event. Because that was the reality now, my future, my new identity. Rosalie's web was no longer my trap. A restless week followed. I discovered I was checking my phone more often, half expecting another crisis call about Savannah. The hospital never returned my call, likely due to privacy policies. Kenneth emailed once, telling me she was recovering, though still in a fragile emotional state. "Thanks for leaving that message," he wrote. "It helped." That was it, no demands, no manipulations, just gratitude. It was a strange, bittersweet relief to know she was alive, but still in a dark place. In that same span, Dina and I embarked on a new initiative. We tested a tea and mindfulness evening, inviting a small group for guided meditation followed by ceremonial tea service. Word spread swiftly among Tokyo's wellness crowd, filling our lounge with a different demographic people in yoga pants and mindful attire, seeking tranquility in a hectic city. By the event's end, multiple attendees praised the experience as transformative. We sold out the next session within hours. Business soared. We decided to hire a part-time marketing coordinator. Watching the brand flourish, I felt moments of almost euphoric satisfaction, a stark contrast to the emotional storm swirling around my personal ties. Sometimes I marveled at how a single betrayal could catalyze such transformation in me, driving me to create a haven for others seeking calm. Midway through that week, the detective's customary update arrived with bigger news. Bernard's trial was finally set. A series of incriminating documents had surfaced, implicating him in multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and possibly even intimidation tactics. If convicted, he faced a lengthy prison sentence. The detective also mentioned that Rosalie might be called as a witness, given she'd benefited from hush money and had knowledge of his shady dealings. Part of me wanted to savor the schadenfreude. Bernard, the man who fathered my wife's kids, now toppling from his corrupt throne. But I also recognized the trial could drag Rosalie and the kids into more turmoil. The detective casually noted, "Rosalie's in a precarious spot. She can't hide from subpoenas forever. Harold's condition is dire. The kids are effectively on their own." That last line weighed on me. If Rosalie got entangled in legal nightmares, the kids might be left even more adrift. But I repeated Dina's mantra. "They're not your responsibility." Sure, that logic stung, but it was vital for my sanity. Meanwhile, Bernard's downfall loomed as a final cosmic justice. He who orchestrated so many lies would now face the law. I sent Dina the summary. She responded with a simple, "Poetic justice. Keep focusing on our expansion." I couldn't help but smile at her unwavering clarity. Despite the success, a faint tension crackled beneath the surface for me. Customers noticed I sometimes drifted into quiet spells. Dina picked up on it. One evening, after we closed shop, we took a short walk through a park near Omotesando. The softly lit path meandered among landscaped trees, small lanterns casting gentle pools of light. She slowed her pace, glancing at me. "Your mind's miles away, isn't it?" I exhaled. "Sorry, I'm just thinking about how each piece of news from the U.S. still rattles me more than I'd like. It's like no matter how much I bury it in tea ceremonies, it resurfaces." She nodded with understanding. "Betrayal leaves a deep mark. And you're dealing with the kids' issues, which keep it fresh." We stopped beneath a tall oak tree, branches swaying. I managed a half smile. I guess it's unrealistic to think I could snap my fingers and be free from all emotional ties. Her eyes reflected warmth. "That's part of being human, Brian. Healing isn't linear, but if it helps, look at what you've accomplished. You created this lounge, you're forging expansions, you're helping people find peace in their cups of tea. That's a monumental achievement for someone who was shattered only a few months ago." I breathed in the night air, letting her words sink in. I suppose I should be proud, and I am. It's just sometimes I worry if I'm turning into an uncaring person by refusing to rescue them. Dina placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're not uncaring. You're just protecting yourself from a situation that nearly destroyed you. That's not cruelty. It's survival." I swallowed, nodding. "Thanks. I needed that reminder." In that quiet park, with the city's muffled bustle beyond, we shared a moment of mutual respect, maybe more, though neither of us put a label on it. Then we continued strolling, tension easing with each step. Sakura Leaf reached a pivotal milestone when a well-known Tokyo food journalist wrote a glowing feature, praising our new-age approach to ancient tea traditions. Calls flooded in from local media wanting short interviews or segments. We decided to host a small press event one afternoon, less than 10 journalists, each given a hands-on demonstration of matcha whisking, plus a taste of our premium sencha. That press event felt surreal. Cameras flashed, microphones hovered while I explained our ethos. I held up a delicate chawan bowl, showing them how to whisk the matcha vigorously but gracefully. My voice, once shaky when discussing my personal past, now rang with confident enthusiasm about tea. They asked about my origin story, why a foreigner dove into tea culture with such passion. I kept my answers general. I fell in love with the art of tea, found solace in its rituals, and wanted to share that with the world. I left out the heartbreak impetus. Dina stood nearby, offering supportive nods, stepping in if any reporter pried too personally. By the end, the journalists seemed captivated. One wrote notes feverishly, murmuring about how refreshing it was to see a Western entrepreneur so dedicated to preserving authenticity rather than commercializing it. I ducked my head humbly. Inside, a swirl of pride soared. This is who I am now. The old me is gone. That evening, Dina and I celebrated with a quiet, private toast in the lounge after closing. We clinked cups of lightly brewed gyokuro, the day's success humming in the background. My grin was genuine. I never thought I'd be on the cusp of something this big. She returned my smile, eyes gleaming. You deserve it, and it's only going to grow from here. Part of me wished Rosalie or the kids could see how I'd risen, but I pushed that thought away, reminding myself they'd chosen a different path. Still, the kids weren't out of the picture. Kenneth emailed me again, this time with news. Savannah had left the hospital but needed ongoing therapy. Their finances remained dire. Harold's disability money barely covered rent, and Rosalie was embroiled in Bernard's trial fiasco. I just got a job at a local diner, he wrote. Savannah might do part-time retail. We're scraping by, but we're not giving up, Dad. Just wanted you to know we're trying to stand on our own. Reading that, my heart felt a faint easing of tension. They were at least attempting to be self-reliant. No direct request for money now, just an update, as though they wanted my approval or a small nod of encouragement. So they learned something from the meltdown, I reflected. I typed a brief reply. I'm glad you're trying. Keep going. I wish you two well. That was it. No fatherly scolding or open arms, just a neutral pat on the back. Did it hurt to remain so distant? Yes. But it was the only balance I could strike, offering a hint of moral support without reopening the door to a paternal role I could no longer fulfill. If anything, I felt relief that they were trying to fix their own mess, albeit too late to salvage what we once had. Bernard's trial kicked off with a media splash. Local business channels reported on his years of corruption, hidden shell companies, and intimidation tactics. Rosalie was indeed subpoenaed, forced to testify about hush money and her knowledge of his financial dealings. The detective said she looked broken and defeated on the witness stand. She admitted to receiving funds, confessed to playing a role in certain cover-ups. Observers whispered about her affair, the false paternity fiasco. The scandal cast her as a pitiful figure, complicit yet overshadowed by Bernard's deeper crimes. Harold remained absent from the proceedings, apparently too impaired to appear. The kids weren't called to testify, but they faced gossip and sidelong glances in their community. The whole affair was a fiasco that validated my choice to flee. If I'd stayed, they might have dragged me in as a side witness or co-conspirator. I shuddered at the thought. One morning, Dina found me grimly reading these trial updates on my phone. She touched my arm. The distance you put between yourself and that toxic environment saved you, and it let you build something positive here. I nodded, swallowing an ache that flared up. Still, seeing Rosalie degrade herself in court, it's not satisfying. It's just tragic. She could have chosen differently. Dina exhaled softly. Tragedy is sometimes the end result of a string of bad choices. You did what you had to. Don't dwell on them. She was right. I forced myself to refocus on Sakura Leaf's expansions. We had an upcoming tasting event with a major investor from Los Angeles. That was my future. Why dwell on a trial that symbolized everything toxic about my past? Over the next weeks, we ramped up marketing for a potential second location in Tokyo, or maybe a pop-up in Kyoto somewhere with a rich tea tradition we could honor. The idea excited me, a traveling concept that showcased regional nuances. Yusuke pitched a design theme for each region: Kyoto's historical elegance, Tokyo's modern flair. Dina worked on financial forecasts. In quiet moments, I marveled at how unstoppable it felt, like a chain reaction of positivity once I cut out the negative forces. I recognized the parallel to how, in relationships or in business, removing toxic elements allows healthy growth. Each time I recalled Harold bragging about living in my house or Rosalie's weeping pleas, I shuddered. They nearly crushed me. Now I soared because I'd learned to let go, forging a new identity anchored in something pure. One evening, we hosted a small celebration dinner for our staff in the lounge after hours, just takeout sushi, casual chatter. They toasted me for the brand's success, but I turned it back on them. "You're the ones delivering the experience daily," I insisted. The staff's faces lit up with gratitude, forging a team spirit that warmed me. Dina, smiling softly from across the room, lifted her glass. "To Sakura Leaf, and to Brian's vision that started it all." The small group cheered, raising cups of sake. My eyes stung with emotion. It was a far cry from the lonely nights I'd spent reeling from betrayal. But the old nightmares still made occasional cameos in my sleep. Rosalie's tear-streaked face, the kids' accusatory glares, Bernard's menacing smirk. I'd jolt awake, heart racing, only to find the quiet of my Tokyo apartment. Over time, the nightmares dulled in intensity, overshadowed by daily victories at the lounge. I found comfort in small routines: morning tea on my balcony, nightly reflection on the day's achievements. The bed no longer felt too large or too empty. I was forging a peaceful solitude. Occasionally, Dina and I spent late nights sipping leftover brewed samples, exchanging personal anecdotes. She told me about her upbringing in Canada, her path to law, her own heartbreak years back that spurred her global wanderlust. I shared glimpses of my childhood, my parents' unwavering love, how I once believed I had the perfect family with Rosalie. These talks nurtured a deeper camaraderie. A subtle spark flickered sometimes, an undercurrent of mutual admiration. But we stayed professional, perhaps from caution or from respect for each other's vulnerabilities. One night, I caught Dina looking at me with a warm, lingering gaze. My pulse quickened, but she simply smiled, wishing me a good night before stepping out. I stood in the quiet lounge, a swirl of conflicting feelings rising. Am I ready for that kind of closeness again? The question lingered as I locked up. For now, I decided building trust in our business partnership was more important than complicating matters with romance. Even so, the possibility glimmered in the background. Then came the news that Bernard was found guilty on multiple counts, enough to guarantee a lengthy prison sentence. The detective reported he'd glowered at the judge, cursing under his breath as the verdict was read. Rosalie had testified to enough financial wrongdoing to seal his fate, though she walked away with tarnished credibility. The kids were rumored to be relieved. Bernard's menacing presence had overshadowed them for years. Now, ironically, they were free from his influence. While I certainly harbored no love for Bernard, I felt no triumphant glee either. It was just another page closing. He would rot in prison, serving as a cautionary tale. The detective wrote, "Rosalie left court in tears, gave a short interview saying she regrets everything. She mentioned you by name, apologizing publicly. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. Apologies now, after so much damage?" Dina read the same update, then shot me a glance. "You still want no public statement, correct?" I nodded. "Absolutely not. Let her apology ring hollow. I've no interest in a spectacle." She agreed. Our brand soared on its own merits. Dragging personal drama into the media would only muddy our reputation. So I let Rosalie's public lamentation pass without comment. Let the world see her contrition if they cared. I was done with that storyline. My mind fixated on the next step, finalizing a pop-up schedule in Kyoto. That, I told myself, was real life now. The next few days brought a calm that felt like the hush after a storm. The lounge thrived, New expansions took shape. Bernard's downfall was sealed, and I had minimal contact with Kenneth or Savannah. The updates from them were sporadic but slightly more positive. Kenneth found steadier work, Savannah remained in therapy, and they were forging ahead with minimal support from Rosalie or Harold. It was as if they'd awakened to the reality that they couldn't rely on me or Bernard or anyone but themselves. One quiet afternoon, as I sat in my office reviewing brand extension proposals, my phone buzzed. A short text from Kenneth. "Thanks for not giving up on us entirely. We'll be okay. Just wanted you to know we're trying." I stared at the screen, heart tightening with an odd mix of relief and sorrow. This is probably the best outcome possible, I thought. Them forging independence, me continuing my life unburdened. I typed a brief reply. "I'm glad. Keep going." Simple. No fatherly warmth, yet no coldness either. The perfect line between caution and empathy. When I powered off the phone, I gazed around the lounge from behind the small window of my office. Customers laughed softly at the bar, servers whisked matcha with graceful motions. The lighting gave the place a golden glow. My chest warmed, overshadowing any lingering sadness. They might find their path, and I've found mine, I told myself. That in itself was a healing step. With Bernard in prison and Rosalie's drama receding, the final chords of my old life seemed to unravel. The official sentencing hammered the last nail in Bernard's coffin. A decade behind bars, minimum. Rosalie's name popped up once more in a minor local scandal. Some questioned whether she'd face charges for fraud, but apparently she'd struck a deal by testifying. She was left with tarnished reputation, minimal funds, and a shaky future. The kids, though, kept inching forward in their own independent ways. For me, the lounge was a non-stop whirlwind. We prepared for a special autumn-themed promotion, rolled out limited-edition tea blends with hints of seasonal spices. Yusuke's team transformed our decor to evoke autumn leaves, installing a decorative arrangement near the entrance. Customers adored it, crowding the lounge nightly. Sometimes, after hours, I found myself standing amid the decor, letting the faint aroma of spiced teas mingle with the memory of crisp fall nights from my childhood. It reminded me how seasons can symbolize change, how I'd moved from heartbreak's winter to a harvest of newfound possibilities. One Saturday, we hit our highest daily sales record. Our staff beamed with pride. Dina gave me a playful nudge, whispering, "Look at you, Mr. T-Mogul." I only laughed softly, letting that label swirl in my mind. T-Mogul, a far cry from the man who once felt worthless and betrayed. Life was undeniably better now. Yet amid the success, I noticed Dina was pushing for expansions with an almost feverish pace. She lined up multiple investor meets in rapid succession, scheduled back-to-back calls about potential overseas shipping deals. While I appreciated her drive, it sometimes felt too fast. One evening, I gently raised the issue. "Are we risking overextension?" She paused in the lounge's back office, glancing at me over a stack of legal documents. "I just see an opening in the market, Brian. Striking while the iron's hot could catapult us into a global sensation. But if you feel rushed, we can slow down." I sighed. "I love the ambition, Dina, truly. Just mindful that brand growth can falter if we expand recklessly. We've done wonders in Tokyo. Let's anchor it before we leap too far." Her expression softened. "You're right. Sometimes I forget you're a real human behind that unstoppable veneer," she joked wryly. "We'll pace ourselves." The tension melted, replaced by an appreciative quiet. I marveled at how seamlessly we navigated disagreements, a stark contrast to the dysfunctional communication I'd once endured in my marriage. Dina and I were a balanced team, each respectful of the other's viewpoint. Deep down, I suspected a romantic undercurrent, but we let it simmer quietly, focusing on our synergy as partners first. During this calmer stretch, Kenneth sent me an occasional email update. He'd managed to re-enroll part-time in a community college. Savannah, too, was stable enough to consider returning to classes, albeit slowly. Each note included a cautious "thank you" for the moral support, even though I provided no financial backing. They mentioned living in a small apartment with minimal furniture, scraping by with second-hand items and part-time wages. "It's humbling, Dad," Kenneth wrote, "but I guess that's how we learn." Reading those lines triggered a swirl of pride and sadness. They were forging an honest path, something I always valued. If Rosalie had manipulated them less, maybe we'd have had this moment as a normal father-children bond. But fate had broken that possibility, and biology confirmed it was never truly mine to keep. Still, I was glad they found a measure of self-reliance. That's the best resolution for them, I told myself. Now and then, Kenneth ended the emails with, "If you ever decide you can forgive us enough for a visit, we'd love that." I never responded to that part. My soul wasn't ready to face them physically. For now, a digital distance sufficed. Dina agreed it was wise to keep that boundary for my emotional well-being. A new twist arrived when a small U.S. media outlet, one focusing on inspirational businesses, contacted us. They wanted to interview me about launching a successful tea lounge in Tokyo after a personal turning point. I was wary, suspecting they'd dig for the salacious betrayal story. But the editor assured Dina, "We'll respect personal boundaries. We just find it inspiring how a foreigner overcame adversity to create a unique brand." Initially, I hesitated. Dina gently reminded me that a measured approach could help us in the North American market. "Just keep details about your marital breakdown vague. Focus on the brand and personal growth," she advised. We set the interview in a quiet corner of our lounge after closing time. The interviewer, a polite woman named Sarah, asked about my background, my fascination with tea, and how I pivoted from U.S. restaurant investments to opening in Tokyo. I spoke of my love for Japanese tea culture, the calm it gave me during a life crisis. She pressed a bit. "May I ask about that crisis? Or is it too personal?" I took a breath, carefully framing my words. Let's just say I was in a situation where I realized everything I believed about my family turned out false. It broke me for a while, but I found solace in the art of tea, discovering a sense of peace and purpose that helped me rebuild. She nodded, eyes kind. "That's brave. You turned pain into productivity." I gave a small smile. "Yes, it's proof that heartbreak can catalyze something beautiful. I'd like others to know that even when everything collapses, there might be a path forward if you find a genuine passion." We ended on that uplifting note. Sarah thanked me, promising the piece would focus on positivity and resilience. Walking her out, I felt a slight tremor of vulnerability. If she digs deeper, she might uncover the messy details. But Dina's reassurance steadied me. "It'll be fine," she said. "You controlled the narrative." A few days later, the article went live online. It was titled "From Crisis to Calm: How One American Built a Tea Sanctuary in Tokyo." The piece highlighted my pivot, praising my sincerity and the lounge's serene ambience. There was only a vague allusion to a personal betrayal, no mention of names or paternity scandal. The tone was uplifting, praising how adversity fueled a new chapter. The online response was surprisingly huge: supportive comments, curiosity from potential American tourists, a spike in social media buzz. I felt a mix of pride and anxiety reading the article. Pride because it validated my journey. Anxiety because some readers might dig into my past if they were nosy enough. But overall, the coverage was positive, fueling more interest in sakura leaf from overseas. Friends from the U.S. emailed congratulations. My parents called, saying they loved the article, proud I'd found success on my own terms. Even some old acquaintances who'd once worried I was running away said they admired my perseverance. That recognition felt surreal. Months ago, I was the pitied husband, the naive father. Now, the world saw me as a courageous entrepreneur forging peace in tea leaves. Part of me marveled at how narratives can flip so dramatically. That wave of positivity nudged Dina and me closer to finalizing a deal for a limited pop-up in Vancouver. She had connections there, her Canadian roots providing an easy entry. We planned to send a small team for a 6-week test, setting up a sakura leaf experience in a trendy district. If it succeeded, we'd consider a permanent shop. Yusuke got giddy about designing a scaled-down version of our Tokyo lounge, blending local Canadian aesthetics with Japanese minimalism. Meanwhile, I hammered out the logistics: shipping tea from Japan, ensuring fresh supply, training staff to replicate the ceremonial approach. The project was ambitious, but it lit a fire within me. If Vancouver works, maybe we can do LA, London, anywhere. It was exhilarating. The deeper I delved, the more confident I grew that tea was my life's calling. One evening, as Dina and I pinned down budgets in my apartment, I realized how natural it felt to share not just a business ambition, but also jokes, personal anecdotes, the comfort of late-night takeout. Eventually, she yawned and said she should head home. Before she left, I hesitated at the door, a swirl of gratitude welling in me. "Thanks for everything," I whispered, voice tight with unspoken sentiment. She paused, searching my eyes. Then she smiled, warm and sincere. "We're a team, Brian. Let's keep being unstoppable, shall we?" My chest stirred with what might have been affection or longing. "Absolutely," I said softly, letting her slip into the hallway. The door closed, leaving me in a hush of unresolved emotions, but it was a hush I didn't fear. I let a small smile cross my face, confident that life was moving in the right direction. On the personal front, Kenneth updated me that Savannah was inching toward a community college enrollment. He sounded guardedly hopeful. "We're starting from scratch, but at least we're not drowning in illusions anymore." That phrase triggered a reflection in me. Illusions about paternal bonds, illusions about fidelity, illusions about easy money from me or Bernard. All shattered, replaced by reality. They might actually become stronger for it, I thought. He ended the email with, "Sometimes I wish I could taste that tea lounge you built. See how you created a new life. Maybe one day." I felt a pang. Part of me imagined them walking into Sakura Leaf, sheepish but curious, me showing them the elegant setup. I quickly dismissed the fantasy. My scars were still fresh. Perhaps in a distant future I'd let them visit. But not yet. Dina noticed my introspection at times, but never pride. She understood I was still navigating a tender line between paternal instincts and self-protection. Oddly, building and serving tea for strangers was easier than dealing with the wounded kids I once called mine. Yet as I sat in the lounge some nights, I found a measure of peace knowing they were forging onward without illusions. Maybe that was enough. Shortly after, Rosalie reappeared in the shadows, though indirectly. She left a voicemail on my business line. Dina screened it. She says she's about to be evicted, that Harold is bedridden, and she begs for a plane ticket to Tokyo. She wants to try again to speak with you in person. Dina's tone was laced with annoyance. She claims the kids can't help because they're barely scraping by. I exhaled, irritation rising. She has no shame. I'm done with face-to-face pleas. She can rant all she wants. Dina nodded. I figured. I'll block her again. If she tries to come, we'll alert security. A swirl of pity warred with disgust. But I recalled her fiasco in Tokyo last time, sobbing in my lounge, ignoring all blame until she needed me. Nothing changed. She hadn't reformed. She'd just grown more desperate. I won't rescue her, I reminded myself firmly. If she truly wanted redemption, she'd find it without leveraging my compassion. Dina handled the blocking. I resumed my day, heart calm in my decision. Looking around the lounge, I reaffirmed, this is my sanctuary. I won't let Rosalie's chaos contaminate it again. The day finally came to soft launch our Vancouver pop-up concept. While I stayed in Tokyo to keep the flagship stable, Dina flew out with a small team, setting up the curated space in a stylish district near downtown. Through nightly video calls, I saw glimpses of the set-up wooden counters, subtle lighting, a scaled-down but equally tranquil vibe. Dina's excitement shone in each call. People are intrigued, Brian. We're nearly sold out for the first weekend's tasting sessions. I felt a rush of pride. Sakura Leaf is going international. I realized how drastically my life had shifted from the depressed father who fled to Tokyo. Now I was orchestrating expansions across borders. On launch day, Dina called me with an elated grin. We had lines down the block. Vancouverites love it. Press coverage is rolling in. This might be huge. Her voice carried a subdued sense of triumph, a far cry from the heartbreak entangling us months prior. I congratulated her, heart pounding with joy. After the call ended, I sank into a chair in the lounge, letting the success wash over me. A staff member passing by asked if I was okay. I just smiled, nodded, saying softly, I'm more than okay. That night, the lounge was quiet after closing. I brewed a single cup of jokuro, sipped in solitude, and reflected on the improbable chain of events that led here. Betrayal, heartbreak, relocation, reinvention. Now, an international brand blossoming under my guidance. I closed my eyes, exhaling a soft breath of gratitude. I may never erase the wounds, but I've learned to channel them into something meaningful. Days later, Dina returned from Vancouver, success radiating in her every step. She entered the lounge mid-afternoon, and staff members clapped spontaneously. She laughed, hugging a few folks. I approached with a grin. "You did it! We did it!" I corrected. She beamed. "They embraced the concept wholeheartedly, Brian. The synergy between tea culture and a laid-back Canadian vibe is golden. We're already talking about extending the pop-up." Our eyes locked a moment, brimming with shared triumph. Impulsively, I reached out and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back, a flicker of warmth passing between us. Then we realized staff were watching, so we coughed politely, releasing hands. But the moment lingered, an unspoken recognition that we'd built something extraordinary together. That evening, after closing, we uncorked a small bottle of sake in the lounge to toast our expansions. Just the two of us, sitting near the bar in soft lamplight. We reminisced about the chaos of planning, the nerve-wracking early days, the heartbreak that fueled it all. Dina's gaze grew introspective. "I hope on a personal level you see how far you've come," she said gently. "It's not just business success, it's you, standing tall after everything." I let the sake warm my throat, feeling gratitude swirl. "I do see it, and I owe you a chunk of that thanks." She shrugged modestly. "I helped, but it was your spirit that wouldn't quit." We clinked cups. The intimate silence hummed with unspoken possibilities. My mind flicked to how heartbreak had closed one door and perhaps opened another. Yet I told myself, one step at a time. The lounge's lights glowed around us, an oasis of calm in a city that never slept. I closed my eyes, inhaling the faint fragrance of green tea leaves still lingering from the day's brews. When we parted that night, I walked her to the door, an unspoken tension shimmering in the hush. We lingered as though each had something to say, but eventually just smiled. "Tomorrow," I said softly. "Tomorrow," she echoed. And so we ended the day in that quiet, promising note, two souls forging a bright new future, each sip of tea a testament to overcoming betrayal, each step deeper into a life reborn. The days after Dina's return from Vancouver were a heady rush of success stories and big decisions. Our pop-up in Vancouver continued making waves. Pictures of the serene space flooded social media. Local food critics raved about the authenticity of our ceremonies, and sales outperformed even our optimistic projections. That entire week, I found myself buzzing with an excitement that eclipsed any lingering shadows of betrayal. In Tokyo, the flagship lounge maintained its steady influx of patrons. Our staff had become a close-knit team, each person embodying the ritualistic calm we wanted customers to feel. We'd launched a new tea flight, 4 shades of matcha, that guided guests through varying intensity levels of flavor. It quickly became a bestseller, a social media darling. Everywhere I looked, whether in the lounge or in Vancouver photos, I saw smiling faces and meticulously whisked bowls of vibrant green tea. One late evening, while reviewing inventory numbers in the lounge's office, I paused to take in the moment. We're not just surviving, we're flourishing. It felt surreal to recall how only months ago I had stumbled into Tokyo with a broken heart and a burning need to rebuild. Now, I was living proof that heartbreak could transform into creative fuel. That quiet pride in my chest was one of the most rewarding feelings I'd ever experienced. Meanwhile, Kenneth's occasional emails continued to show slow progress. He managed to send me photos of a modest apartment he and Savannah now shared, nothing fancy, but tidy and independent. They each juggled work and community college classes, leaning on each other rather than on Rosalie or Harold. Kenneth wrote, "We haven't seen Mom in weeks. She's off somewhere, possibly couch surfing. Harold's stuck in bed. It's sad, but we realized we can't fix them. We need to fix ourselves." Those lines struck me. They'd grown up fast. No more illusions that a benevolent father figure, me, or sugar daddy, Bernard, would bail them out. Each note carried a humbler tone, a raw honesty. He never asked for money, only acknowledging their gratitude that I once tried to guide them, even if we all lived under a lie. I replied sparingly, but encouraged them to keep at it, my stance still cautious yet supportive in spirit. For once, I felt an odd sense of relief that they'd found their own footing. The guilt I used to carry worrying about abandoning them faded into acceptance. They aren't my biological kids, but at least they're forging stability. It was the best outcome possible under the circumstances. Dina and I turned our sights to formalizing a permanent Vancouver location. Our pop-up's landlord offered a long-term lease with favorable terms. Investors chimed in, urging us to go for it. We decided to draft a full plan: the lounge size, design budget, expected monthly sales. It meant Dina would make another trip soon, possibly for weeks, to oversee negotiations. One afternoon, we sat in a quiet booth near the lounge bar, surrounded by the faint chatter of customers. She spread out legal documents, pointing at highlighted sections. If we sign for 2 years, we can negotiate a renewal clause at a set rate, but we also have to handle staffing carefully. I nodded, scanning the lines. I can send 2 or 3 of our Tokyo staff to train a local team. We'll keep our brand consistent. She smiled, flicking her gaze up from the paperwork. Exactly. It's ambitious, but totally doable. Plus, your story resonates in Canada, an American forging a T-bridge from Japan. Our eyes met, a shared excitement thrumming. I realized how intimately we worked together, how our synergy went beyond mere colleagues. The overhead lights gave her hair a soft sheen, and for a fleeting moment the hush between us was charged with something deeper. But we refocused on the contract, each respecting the unspoken line we hadn't yet dared to cross. At night, sleep sometimes eluded me, replaced by thoughts of expansion, future possibilities, and that subtle, growing bond with Dina. One evening, I decided to close the lounge personally, letting the staff go home early. After wiping down the counters, checking inventory, and shutting off the overhead lights, I lingered among the dim ambiance. Sipping a cup of our top-grade matcha, I felt a calm gratitude flood my senses. That was when the door unlocked. It was Dina, stepping in with a gentle knock. "Didn't realize you were still here," she said softly. "I was nearby, thought the lights were out, but saw your shadow." I gave a wry smile. "Wanted a quiet minute to reflect. This place at night feels serene, doesn't it?" She nodded, approaching the bar. "Mind if I join?" I poured her a fresh matcha, and we sipped side by side in the low lighting. Outside, the Tokyo streetlights glowed through our window's frosted glass. A warm hush enveloped us. My heart pounded softly at the closeness. We exchanged small updates about the Vancouver plan, but our voices were hushed, as though the lounge itself demanded reverence. After a few sips, she turned to me. "Brian, have you considered taking a vacation? Even a short break, maybe to Kyoto to recharge? You've been running non-stop for months." I exhaled. It crossed my mind, but I keep feeling I can't slow down when so much is happening. Her gaze held gentle concern. "You deserve a moment to breathe for yourself. Even a few days might give perspective." I mulled it over. Maybe she's right. Silence stretched, the quiet tension deepening. My pulse fluttered, aware of her closeness in the tranquil dark. For a second, I almost leaned in, almost voiced something about more than business. But caution made me hold back. Instead, I forced a small smile. "I'll think about it. Thank you for reminding me." She returned the smile. We finished our matcha in companionable silence before locking up. As we parted outside, Tokyo's neon haze lit the sidewalk. A faint swirl of unresolved feelings lingered between us, but neither pressed forward that night. Each step away was tinged with the awareness that something was blossoming, yet we let it remain unspoken a bit longer. Life took a quick turn when Kenneth emailed me an emergency note. "Savannah relapsed, Dad. She's back in a crisis. No money for therapy. I'm frantic." My stomach sank. He insisted it wasn't a lie or manipulation. He sounded genuinely panicked. "She refused to keep her meds going. She's suicidal again." The paternal side of me roared in concern. I stared at my laptop, heart pounding. Do I intervene? Do I keep distance? Dina, seeing my agitation, asked what was wrong. I explained the situation in a terse summary. She laid a hand on my shoulder, face solemn. "Maybe she truly needs professional help beyond local charity resources. Could you facilitate something that doesn't entangle you financially with Rosalie or Harold?" I rubbed my temples. "Maybe. A direct payment to a mental health clinic or something? But is that crossing the line I set? She gave me a sympathetic look. This is your call, Brian. There's no perfect solution. If she truly might harm herself, a small gesture of support like funding a reputable therapy program could save her life. Doesn't mean you're reassuming fatherhood. A swirl of guilt and compassion coalesced in my chest. I couldn't bear the thought of Savannah harming herself again. Even if she wasn't my biological child, I'd raised her for years, loved her as my own. After wrestling with the dilemma, I resolved, I can pay for a short-term therapy program, no direct funneling to Rosalie. Dina agreed to help arrange it discreetly through a mental health organization, ensuring receipts and legal disclaimers to avoid future financial entanglements. I typed a careful reply to Kenneth. I'll pay for one therapy program if it can help her recover, but no direct money to any family member. I arrange it with the clinic, you both coordinate. That's it. I'm sorry it's come to this. Hitting send left me trembling, but a subtle relief glimmered. It's the right thing, I told myself. I won't watch her spiral without attempting a lifeline. Time passed, and Dina's coordination yielded results. A specialized mental health center accepted Savannah, covered for a limited span by my discreet payment. Kenneth's next email was full of gratitude, no demands. Thank you, Dad. She got admitted, and the staff are great. I promise we won't exploit this, just want her to be safe. The honesty in his tone eased some tension within me. Perhaps they were truly learning accountability. As the therapy arrangement stabilized, I felt a cautious peace. I hadn't resumed fatherly duties, just offered a critical intervention so nobody died. That line compassion without re-entanglement guided me now. Dina's consistent counsel and support proved invaluable. I realized she wasn't just a business partner or a casual friend. She was a confidant who'd seen my darkest vulnerabilities and still stood beside me. Meanwhile, Rosalie's name appeared only briefly in Kenneth's updates. She'd drifted away, possibly living with a distant relative or ex-friend. Harold remained incapacitated in the same dingy apartment. My detective's updates implied the couple was basically estranged. I mustered no pity. They had each other's toxic companionship once, but now they reaped the consequences. I can't fix them, nor do I want to, I reminded myself. With that turmoil partly settled, my focus returned to Sakura Leaf. The Vancouver pop-up soared high, and the landlord pressed us for a longer commitment. We decided to sign, making it our first official overseas branch. Dina planned another trip there to finalize details. I toyed with the idea of joining her, but responsibilities in Tokyo loomed. Plus, I felt a gentle nudge from her that I should heed her earlier advice, take a brief personal break. One night, while scanning potential Kyoto getaway spots on my phone, Dina noticed. She offered a bright smile. Kyoto is magical, especially in autumn. You'll soak in the traditional tea ceremonies at the source. It's the best way to replenish your creative well. I nodded, mind flashing to the picturesque temples and serene gardens I'd only glimpsed on day trips. Yeah, maybe a few days. I can meet local tea masters, get fresh ideas for the lounge. Her eyes gleamed. Exactly. You can return with even deeper authenticity. And so I booked a short stay, a 3-day excursion, leaving our lounge in capable hands. Dina reassured me she'd handle anything urgent. As the departure day neared, I felt a tingle of anticipation. A real vacation. Part of me was nervous. I hadn't truly allowed myself downtime since arriving in Japan. But I also craved the quiet beauty of Kyoto's temples, the hushed, tatami-floored tea rooms, the gentle rustle of bamboo groves. Arriving in Kyoto by bullet train felt like stepping into a classic postcard. Autumn leaves aflame in hues of red and gold, ancient shrines nestled among stone paths. My small ryokan, traditional inn, exuded tranquil charm, paper screens, tatami mats, a courtyard garden with a trickling fountain. The innkeeper greeted me with a bow, ushering me to a room overlooking mossy stones and meticulously raked gravel. My heart calmed instantly. No lounge schedules, no expansions, no heartbreak flashbacks, just the simplicity of a century-old setting. The next day, I attended a private tea ceremony with a renowned tea master, witnessing the meticulous grace of preparing matcha in a silent, minimal environment. Each gesture folding the fukusa cloth, scooping tea powder, whisking with measured precision was imbued with profound mindfulness. I recognized the source of our lounge's inspiration, only this was deeper, older, purer. Sipping the frothy green liquid in that hushed room, I felt tears prick my eyes. This is what saved me, I thought. This stillness, this ritual. The master asked softly if I was moved. I bowed, replying in broken Japanese, "Hi, arigato gozaimasu," because words in English felt inadequate. A sense of gratitude welled without tea. I might still be lost. On the final evening in Kyoto, I wandered a winding stone path beneath lantern-lit maple trees. The crisp air carried a faint aroma of roasting chestnuts. I paused on a small bridge overlooking a narrow stream. Moonlight shimmered on the water's surface. My thoughts drifted to Dina, the lounge, Kenneth, Savannah, even Rosalie in a fleeting sense. I marveled at how far I'd come, yet how life continued weaving threads of past and present. In that contemplative hush, I found a deeper forgiveness in my heart, not a forgiveness that would lead me back to them, but a quiet acceptance that every tragedy had led me here. I let go of the last shards of anger. Rosalie, Harold, Bernard, they're trapped in their own storms, and I'm free. A subtle peace enveloped me, as though the ancient spirits of Kyoto blessed my release from pain. That night, I returned to the ryokan, sipped a final cup of locally sourced matcha, and slept soundly. For the first time, no nightmares lurked. My dreams were of calm streams, blossoming tea fields, and the faint silhouette of Dina smiling by my side, though when I awoke, that detail made me blush with a shy amusement. Returning to Tokyo, I was met by Dina's bright grin at the lounge entrance. "You look rejuvenated," she teased, eyes twinkling. "Kyoto suits you." I laughed softly, stepping inside to reacquaint myself with our bustling space. Indeed, I felt lighter. You have no idea. It was everything I needed. As we settled into the office, she updated me on Vancouver's final lease signing, new reservations piling up in Tokyo, and a few potential investor inquiries for expansions in Singapore or London. I listened with calm enthusiasm. Usually, such big moves might stress me out, but in that moment, I felt capable of handling it all. My Kyoto clarity lingered, reminding me to balance ambition with inner peace. Before Dina left for the evening, I finally mustered the courage to speak more candidly. "I realized something in Kyoto," I began, voice trembling with nerves. "Life's short, and we've both come from heartbreak or challenges. I appreciate you beyond just a business partner. You've been my rock." She inhaled quietly, a soft flush creeping along her cheeks. "Brian, Her voice caught. We stood there in the warm glow of the overhead lights, the lounge silent after closing. I offered a hesitant smile. "No pressure. I just wanted to acknowledge the connection I feel, the trust we've built. If you ever feel the same, maybe we can explore what that means." Her eyes glistened, relief and fondness mingling. "I do feel it," she whispered, cheeks dimpling, "but I was waiting for you to heal, not wanting to push." Emotion welled in my chest, gratitude, relief, a gentle joy. "I'm not fully healed, but I'm ready to see if we can move forward together." We embraced in a delicate hug, hearts pounding. It wasn't a grand, passionate display, just a tender closeness, signifying the next stage of our shared journey. No words needed, just mutual understanding. My mind reeled with how heartbreak had led me here, to a new bond in the very city that once served as my escape. Sometimes life offers second chances, I thought. I'll accept it with grace. In the weeks after Dina and I acknowledged our mutual feelings, a subtle shift settled between us. By day, we remained the same driven duo, orchestrating Sakura Leaf's expansions with gusto. By night, when the lounge lights dimmed and staff went home, our connection grew warmer, more personal. We'd sometimes share a quiet dinner, talk about life beyond tea, hold hands in the hush of my apartment or hers. It was gentle, respectful, and unhurried, perfect for two people who'd both endured heartbreak. Our staff gradually picked up on the closeness, though we didn't flaunt it. Yusuke, with his ever-perceptive eye, teased me in private. "The synergy is next level, huh?" I just grinned, letting him think what he might. Deep down, it felt good to reclaim a spark of romantic possibility, something I thought had died after Rosalie's betrayal. Now it felt like a quiet, mature love built on shared values and experiences. Meanwhile, business soared. Vancouver's lounge formally opened with a bang, drawing local press. Dina, in a display of trust, decided we could manage from Tokyo remotely while our trained manager on-site handled day-to-day. My phone lit up with photos of the soft, wood-accented space, lines of Canadian tea enthusiasts waiting at the door. I beamed with pride, remembering how improbable all this once seemed. One afternoon, Kenneth sent me an email that radiated cautious excitement. Savannah finished her inpatient therapy program and is doing better. She's on medication and regular counseling. I can't express enough thanks for covering that cost. Without it, she might not be alive. I mean it, Dad. We owe you. The note ended with a line that made my chest tighten. I know we're not your kids by blood, but we still see you as the one who raised us. We'd love to fix our relationship one day whenever you're ready. I stared at that line, emotions swirling. Did I want a future relationship with them? Could I find it in me to share a fatherly bond, even if the biology and past betrayals complicated everything? My mind flashed to the heartbreak of discovering they weren't mine, the anger I carried for months. Yet I also recalled all the genuine love and memories we shared. It was a messy tangle of grief, compassion, and hope. After a day of mulling it over, I typed a measured reply. I'm relieved Savannah is doing better. I don't regret funding her treatment. As for our relationship, let's keep lines of communication open, but I need more time and space to fully heal. I'm not ruling out a future visit, but I can't promise it soon. I appreciate your understanding. I sent it, heart thudding softly. It was the closest I'd come to possibly reconciling in some way. Whether that was wise or not, only time would tell. As expansions thrived, Dina and I also contemplated a presence in Singapore or London next. Big leaps. We polled our investors, who mostly encouraged a slow, steady approach. Dina joked, "We can't clone ourselves to be in 10 cities at once." We settled on continuing Vancouver's success for a year before tackling a third city, ensuring our brand essence wouldn't dilute. That balance between ambition and caution felt emblematic of our entire journey. We introduced new ceremonial classes, occasionally taught by me or a local tea master we partnered with. Customer feedback soared. Travelers raved they wished we had a lounge in their hometown. Each compliment fueled my determination to eventually share Sakura Leaf globally without losing the intimate tranquility that defined us. Through all of this, Dina and I grew more openly affectionate, though never unprofessional around staff. We'd share a private smile across the lounge, a quick hand squeeze in the office. After hours, we let ourselves slip into personal warmth, cooking simple meals in each other's apartments, learning about each other's quirks. In those vulnerable moments, I realized I was experiencing a healthy, adult love free of deception. My old fears of being cheated on still flickered occasionally, but Dina's transparent honesty soothed them. She was never Rosalie, never manipulative. Another sign of healing arrived one late evening when I revisited my stash of old photos images from Mark and Jennifer's, the kids I'd raised under false pretenses, childhood. I had them saved on a cloud drive. I hadn't looked at them since I fled the U.S. Initially, just opening the folder triggered a knot in my stomach. Then I remembered I'd been emailing Kenneth, discovering he'd grown more mature. I clicked through images. Kenneth at a Little League game, Savannah beaming during a birthday with pink frosting on her nose, my younger self standing beside them, arms wrapped lovingly around their shoulders. The pang of betrayal was there, but also a bittersweet nostalgia. Those moments were real, I reminded myself. Even if the foundation was lies, the day-to-day memories still held genuine love and joy. I found one photo of Rosalie cradling Savannah as a toddler, both smiling under a bright summer sun. My heart clenched. That was before everything rotted, before Bernard's shadow overshadowed us. Exhaling a shaky breath, I told myself, I can acknowledge these memories without letting them define my present. I closed the folder, tears moistening my eyes. Yet a sense of acceptance washed over me. This is progress. When Dina asked why I seemed subdued that night, I quietly explained. She simply listened, hand on my shoulder, saying, "Your past is part of you, but it doesn't own you. You can keep those warm memories without reopening wounds." I squeezed her hand, grateful for that insight. Around this time, Harold passed away in abrupt development. Kenneth emailed me a week after it happened. He had complications, never recovered. He was bitter until the end. Mom was absent when he died. It's messy. I sat there, rereading that sentence, feeling an odd emptiness. Harold had once strutted in my robe, claiming my family, humiliating me. Now he was gone, presumably unfulfilled and resentful. No triumph in that. Just a grim end to a foolish man. Kenneth also mentioned Rosalie reappeared briefly, but their relationship with her was almost non-existent. She might have shed tears for Harold's passing, or might have just sought attention unclear. Savannah didn't even attend the funeral, lacking the emotional energy for more drama. Reading this, I realized how final it was for that piece of the puzzle. Harold's chapter closed with no redemption. I felt neither elation nor sorrow, simply relief that one more toxic strand was severed. When I told Dina, she nodded solemnly. He chose his path. Now he's free in a way. Maybe that's an odd form of closure for them all. Indeed, closure like final punctuation on a chaotic sentence that once shaped my downfall. Now, I carried on without that threat lingering. My private hope was that Rosalie might find some impetus to change, but I didn't let that thought dwell too long. Not my concern, I reminded myself. The next big event, Dina proposed we hold an anniversary celebration for Sakura Leaf's Tokyo Lounge marking 1 year since our grand opening. Invite loyal customers, staff families, maybe do a special day of free samples, music, and a short speech from you, she suggested, eyes gleaming. I loved the idea. Yes, let's honor the journey. So much has happened in a year, it feels like a lifetime. Word spread quickly among customers, and excitement brewed for the 1-year anniversary day. We decorated the lounge with subtle paper lanterns, floral arrangements, displayed photos capturing highlights of the past year. Yusuke created a limited edition tea canister with a commemorative design. Staff buzzed with anticipation, each proud to show off how far we'd come. On the anniversary morning, I arrived early, heart thrumming with gratitude. The lounge looked breathtaking. Soft lights, special banners in jade and gold hues, lines of customers waiting outside before we even opened. I greeted them personally, hearing stories of how they'd discovered our lounge and kept returning for the calming ritual. Each story warmed me, reinforcing that I'd built something meaningful. Midday, we paused service for a short ceremony. I stood at the front, staff gathered behind me, customers seated or standing around. The hush that fell over the lounge was profound. Cameras flashed. A local reporter popped in, covering our event. Dina stood off to the side, smiling encouragingly. I cleared my throat, voice trembling slightly. A year ago, I opened Sakura Leaf with a dream of sharing the peace and beauty of tea, but I also carried personal scars, unsure if I could truly rebuild my life. Your support, your love for this experience has proven that from even the darkest times, something bright can grow. Faces around me radiated empathy. I continued, I'm humbled by this community we've built, staff, customers, everyone. Thank you for embracing Sakura Leaf and letting it become part of Tokyo's soul. Staff clapped, cheers rippled through the crowd. Yusuke grinned widely. Dina's gaze glistened with tears. After a moment, I bowed deeply, overwhelmed by the unity in that space. As service resumed with free celebratory samples, I stepped aside to wipe my eyes discreetly. Dina found me, whispered, "That was beautiful. You poured your heart out." I exhaled, a laugh escaping. I meant every word. A wave of contentment swept me. Despite heartbreak and betrayal, I'd found a new family here, a family bound not by blood or marriage, but by shared purpose and the serene magic of tea. The anniversary day ended with a small after-hours gathering of the staff, plus a handful of close supporters, Yusuke, a couple of local influencers who'd become genuine friends, our head server. We feasted on catered sushi, laughed over memories, toasted with sake. The conversation brimmed with inside jokes about initial hiccups, the odd hours we pulled, the late-night creative sessions. When Dina finally called it a night, she and I stood outside the lounge entrance, a warm Tokyo breeze drifting by, lanterns swayed, casting gentle shadows. She turned to me, eyes glowing with shared accomplishment. "You realize you're unstoppable now, right?" she teased, repeating her old compliment. I chuckled, recalling all the times she'd used that term. Unstoppable might be too grand, but I feel free and grateful, I said, voice lowered. And I'm aware that your presence in my life is a big reason I'm here. She brushed a lock of hair aside, smiling. You rebuilt yourself, Brian. I was just the ally who believed in you. Emotion choked me for a moment. I pulled her into a light embrace, mindful of any passers-by but unwilling to hide how I felt. She rested her head on my shoulder, and for a few breaths, we stood in that gentle stillness. Then we parted, a mutual glow in our smiles. I strolled home through the illuminated streets, chest brimming with a mix of relief, pride, and affection. A year's journey from broken man to confident founder. And the path stretched onward, promising even greater peace. Late that same evening, Kenneth sent me a short video snippet, he and Savannah, both wearing shy smiles, standing in their modest apartment's living room. Hey, Dad, Kenneth said in the clip. Just wanted to say we're proud of you for your lounge's anniversary. We saw some photos on social media. Looks amazing. Savannah chimed in softly. We're doing better thanks to your help. No illusions this time, just honest work. Someday we hope we can come see your T-World in person if that's allowed. My eyes misted. They'd recorded a personal congratulations. I felt a pang of longing for the days I used to guide them, but also recognized we'd evolved. We weren't the same family unit, yet there remained a quiet, respectful bond. I typed a short response. Thank you for the video. Congrats on your own progress. One day maybe we'll figure out a visit. Until then, keep working on your goals. Hitting send, I accepted that this partial reconciliation was enough. I wasn't leaping into fatherly arms again, but we'd found a truce. I let the sweet sadness wash over me, then closed my phone, drifting into peaceful sleep. That final acceptance steadied me. I could honor the fatherhood I gave them without letting the betrayal define me. With the anniversary behind us, Sakura Leaf's future glimmered brightly. Dina and I planned a small executive retreat in the coming months, her suggestion, to strategize expansions while also nurturing our personal connection. Whether that retreat was purely business or a personal getaway remained an open question we teased each other about. I found myself smiling more each day, unafraid of joy's fragility. One quiet afternoon, I stood at the lounge's threshold, watching customers file in. Warm greetings, soft music, the faint aroma of fresh matcha. My mind flickered to the battered man who arrived in Tokyo almost 2 years ago, pockets full of heartbreak, heart brimming with rage. How you've grown, I told myself with a gentle inner voice. And you will keep growing. The memory of Rosalie's sobs, Harold's arrogance, Bernard's threats, all felt like distant echoes from a life I once inhabited. The heartbreak had shaped me, yes, but it no longer ruled me. Instead, I'd built a serene empire of tea and tranquility. If that wasn't triumph, I didn't know what was. Stepping inside, I joined Dina at the bar, where she'd begun brewing a new experimental blend. She shot me a playful grin, and my heart fluttered with quiet happiness. Time moved in gentle strides. Another season changed in Tokyo, leaves shifting from vibrant green to golden hues. Sakura Leaf's Tokyo lounge thrived without pause, while our Vancouver branch continued blossoming beyond all projections. Investors nudged us again about London, but Dinah and I held firm no expansions until we fully stabilized these two. I relished that sense of control, no longer feeling compelled to prove myself to the world. During a quiet Monday, I found myself daydreaming about the possibility of traveling with Dina to Canada together, letting her show me her homeland, walking hand in hand through Vancouver's scenic neighborhoods, personally meeting our staff there. When I murmured that idea to her, she brightened. I'd love that. Maybe next spring when the cherry blossoms bloom in Stanley Park, and we can do a cross-cultural blossom festival. Her excitement gave me a warm rush, our personal and professional dreams dovetailing. That night, we shared a simple dinner at my apartment, takeout ramen, laughter, clinking cups of tea. She teased me. If you'd told me a year ago I'd be half in love with an American tea entrepreneur in Tokyo, I'd have called you insane. I chuckled. If you told me I'd actually find love and success after my marriage imploded, I'd have laughed too. The memory of Rosalie stung faintly, but it no longer felt like a festering wound, just a distant lesson. We embraced, letting the soft hush of the night envelop us. One morning, to my surprise, Kenneth emailed saying he and Savannah had an opportunity to travel briefly to Japan, some youth scholarship program that included an educational visit to Tokyo. They'd only be in the city for 3 days. He asked if I was open to meeting for coffee or a short conversation. "No pressure, Dad," he wrote. "We just thought it might be a chance to show you we're serious about building honest lives." My heart pounded. A real meeting? Could I handle seeing them face to face, the kids who were never truly mine but who'd been my everything for so long? Anxiety spiked, but a tiny voice insisted, "Maybe it's time for a new chapter of understanding." I showed Dina the email, half worried she'd advise caution, but she merely offered a gentle nod. "If your heart says you can face them calmly, it might bring closure. You don't owe them anything beyond a coffee, but it might help everyone heal." I wrestled with my emotions for a day, then wrote back, "Okay, let's do a short meeting. I'll pay for your coffee at a neutral cafe near my lounge. I won't promise anything else, but I'm open to seeing you." That was my final step of reclaiming the narrative. If seeing them reopened wounds, at least I'd tried. If it helped us all, so be it. The day arrived with a palpable tension in my chest. The cafe was a small, modern spot just a few blocks from Sakura Leaf, my turf, but not intimately linked to the lounge. I arrived early, sipping water to calm my nerves. Dina offered to come for moral support, but I chose to face them alone. I need to stand on my own 2 feet. After 10 minutes, they stepped in. Kenneth, taller and leaner than I recalled, sporting a hesitant smile. Savannah, hair cut shorter, timid, but standing upright. My stomach twisted with a strange cocktail of paternal affection and betrayal memories. They're older now, in ways that go beyond years. We approached the table, each wearing tentative expressions. Savannah spoke first, voice quiet. "Hi, Dad." The word fell into the air like a fragile leaf. I nodded, not correcting her. "Hello, both of you." They ordered drinks. I stuck with water. Awkward silence reigned until Kenneth cleared his throat. "Thanks for agreeing to see us. We know it's complicated." I managed a small smile. "Yes, it is, but I'm curious how you're doing." They shared how they managed to qualify for a partial scholarship, some cultural exchange program, and found cheap flights. They admitted they'd saved for months, each working part-time while balancing school. I listened, quietly impressed. Their eyes revealed humility I'd never seen before. Savannah said softly, "We never realized how naive we were, blindly trusting Mom and Harold. We hurt you deeply, and for that, I'm sorry." My throat tightened. It was a painful time, but I accept your apology. I wasn't perfect either, maybe blind to signs of trouble. Savannah nodded, tears glistening. Kenneth murmured, "We appreciate the therapy help you gave. It saved her." I just nodded, not wanting to dwell on the heavy drama. Instead, I asked them about college, future goals, how they planned to keep forging independence. They spoke earnestly, each determined to avoid old patterns. The tension eased as we conversed, sipping our drinks, sharing cautious laughter about simpler topics like Kenneth's comedic stumbles in learning some Japanese phrases. A wave of sadness and relief washed over me. We're no longer father and kids, not in the old sense, but we can be something. Eventually, after about an hour, we parted ways. Kenneth offered a handshake, Savannah a brief hug. I allowed it, feeling the swirl of conflicting emotions. She whispered, "Thank you, Dad," near my ear, voice trembling. Then they left. I walked back to the lounge in a daze, heart pounding with residual adrenaline. I wasn't sure if that meeting gave me closure or new questions, but I felt lighter, seeing their genuine effort. They weren't the same kids who scorned me for Harold. They'd learned humility through hardship. My chest ached with bittersweet acceptance. We might never be a standard family, but maybe we can find a new kind of bond. Telling Dina about it later, I admitted I'd been on an emotional roller coaster. She listened attentively, then gently stroked my arm. "You took a brave step, giving them space to apologize and show growth. Even if it doesn't fix the past, it can shape a healthier future." I nodded, tears threatening. "I'm oddly at peace. I see they're forging their own path. That's all I wanted. Now I can let go of the guilt." Dina smiled, relief in her eyes. We embraced, and I realized how integral she'd become in my life, a partner not just in business, but in healing. With that emotional hurdle cleared, I poured my soul into refining Sakura Leaf's menu, introducing more seasonal blends, training staff on deeper aspects of tea ceremony philosophy. Customers noticed the renewed energy. Some regulars commented that I seemed more relaxed, more open. In quiet moments, I recognized the transformation in me. I'd found a new equilibrium, balancing the love for tea, a blossoming relationship with Dina, and a peaceful detachment from my old family drama. On weekends, Dina and I began small explorations around Tokyo, playing tourist in our own city. We wandered art museums, visited secondhand bookshops, tried hidden sushi counters. Holding hands felt natural now, the tension from months of unspoken attraction replaced by gentle contentment. We occasionally brainstormed future trips. Maybe she'd show me her hometown in Canada, or we'd do a tasting tour of rural tea farms in southern Japan. Each plan brimmed with hope. Sometimes I had to pinch myself. This is my life now, happy, successful, anchored in honesty. I never predicted I'd find love again or build an international brand from heartbreak. But life's tapestry can surprise you, weaving heartbreak's dark threads into something beautifully resilient. Months slipped by, cementing our Vancouver location's success. Dina took one more trip there, finalizing staff expansions, while I managed Tokyo's day-to-day. We collaborated constantly over video calls, our synergy unwavering. She returned with stories of Canadian customers enthralled by the ceremonial approach, many begging for an extended run or even multiple branches. Investors lined up, but we remained cautious, not wanting to overexpand. During her absence, I realized how much I missed her presence both professionally and personally. By the time she flew back, I greeted her at the airport with a wide grin. We shared a warm hug that lingered longer than usual. It was an unspoken milestone. We'd moved beyond co-founders to genuine partners in life. We took a quiet taxi ride to the lounge, hand in hand updating each other on the latest developments. Once the driver dropped us off, we stood outside, and Dina exhaled. "Feels good to be home," she murmured, glancing at the Sakura Leaf sign glowing in the Tokyo night. I squeezed her hand. "It does," I whispered, and I realized that yes, home was no longer the US for me. It was here, in this city, with the woman by my side. The final big step arrived unexpectedly, an offer from a reputable publisher to sponsor a Sakura Leaf book about the cultural fusion of East-West tea traditions, featuring my personal story alongside ceremonial techniques. Initially, I balked exposing more of my personal narrative in print, but Dina and Yusuke pointed out it could be a tasteful, uplifting piece if handled carefully. The publisher insisted they'd honor my boundaries, focusing on tea's transformative power, not tabloid drama. After some hesitation, I agreed. Over weeks, I worked with a gentle-mannered editor who interviewed me extensively about tea rituals, business philosophies, and the broad strokes of how heartbreak spurred me to chase authenticity. I withheld names and graphic details, painting only the essential arc. A painful betrayal led me to Japan, where tea became my healing vehicle and the foundation of my success. The process felt cathartic. Each interview reminded me that while heartbreak was the catalyst, the real story was about resilience. The editor's empathy put me at ease, no prying for gossip, just a narrative of growth. By the end, we had a manuscript that blended tea history, personal anecdotes, and guided instructions for a mindful tea lifestyle. Dina read the draft, moved to tears by certain chapters, hugging me with silent pride. Eventually, we arranged a small private reading session in the lounge after hours, just staff, Yusuke, a couple of close friends. I read excerpts, voice trembling at passages recalling my emotional rock bottom and the serene solace of whisking matcha in the early Tokyo mornings. The staff listened with rapt attention, tears glinting. Yusuke dabbed his eyes dramatically, joking, "I'm not crying! You're crying!" Everyone laughed softly, tension releasing. When I finished, the applause was gentle but deeply heartfelt. Dina stepped forward, voice quivering. "You know, Brian, your story resonates with more people than you realize. Thank you for sharing it so openly." She leaned in and planted a soft, chaste kiss on my cheek. The staff smiled, no one surprised by our closeness anymore. I flushed but returned a tender gaze. This was the new me, unafraid of public affection, confident in my resilience. We closed the night in a round of toasts, sake cups clinking, staff sharing their own small journeys. The lounge glowed with an atmosphere of mutual support and gratitude. I sat quietly at the edge of it, a swirl of gratitude flooding me, thinking this was worth every tear shed, every betrayal endured. Time eventually caught up with Rosalie's final fate. Kenneth emailed that she'd drifted away once more, possibly living in a halfway house or with a distant cousin. Rumors abounded. She occasionally phoned the kids, apologizing repeatedly but still reliant on manipulative patterns. They mostly kept minimal contact, no illusions of rescue. For me, hearing this stirred no fresh grief, just a quiet acceptance. She remains lost. I can't change that. Harold was gone, Bernard was locked up, Rosalie was a drifter. Savannah and Kenneth were forging forward, each day more stable. I was relieved. The detective who once tracked all these developments quietly told me he'd close my file soon, as there was nothing urgent left. "Thanks for trusting me, Mr. Bryan," he said in a final message. "Glad you found peace in Tokyo." I thanked him, sending a last payment for services. Another chapter closed. Life pressed on with expansions, lounge events, new tea blends. Dina and I tested cohabitation for a week at her place, just to see if our routines meshed. We discovered a comfortable synergy waking early, doing light exercise, brewing morning matcha together. Each day ended in quiet conversation, heartfelt laughter, or simply reading side by side. It felt organic, no drama or forced romance, just a deep bond built on respect, trust, and shared passions. On a crisp autumn morning, I found myself standing at the lounge's entrance, gazing out at Tokyo's streets. Dina approached, slipping an arm around my waist. Our staff chatted nearby, prepping for opening. I exhaled, letting a wave of contentment wash over me. "Feels like we're exactly where we're meant to be," I murmured. She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder, the faint aroma of tea swirling around us. In that moment, I recalled a single image. Me, shattered, walking away from my old house in the U.S., a suitcase of clothes and heartbreak. Now, how unbelievably far I'd come. I wasn't naive enough to think life was flawless. Pain existed, but I'd channeled it into creation, stepping from darkness into this gently lit future. As the day's first customers arrived, Dina and I parted with a quick kiss, returning to our duties. I slid behind the bar, greeting patrons with a friendly bow, demonstrating the matcha whisk's careful motion. My heart felt light, each whisk stroke reminding me of the unstoppable journey from betrayal to tranquility, from father of illusions to a man of genuine truths. That was my triumph, building a serene empire on the foundation of heartbreak, forging a new family of friends and co-workers, and discovering a deeper love that sprang from honesty. If heartbreak was the cost, then perhaps it was worth paying for this peace. Because in the hush of Sakura Leaf, I found what I once believed lost forever: hope, belonging, and a life reborn among the steam of a humble cup of tea.